My name is Valora, and I was 20. 6th the night, a table full of Mafia millionaires. Shut up because of one sentence that came out of my mouth. In Russian. Crystal glasses lined the table like soldiers. White candles burned down into expensive wax. Imported wine glowed dark in tall stems. The chandelier above us threw soft light over polished silver, white, linen, and the kind of money you only see in movies and nightmares. And me. I was the black maid in a pressed black and white uniform, moving, like a shadow around their chairs, a silver tray balanced on my hand. To them, I didn't have a name, just the help. Posmotri na ni, one man muttered in Russian, his eyes sliding over my body like I was something on the menu, like a little decoration, dark but pretty. The men around him chuckled, low and satisfied. Another leaned back in his chair, tapping his thick fingers against his champagne flute. Exotic, he agreed, in Russian, like a trophy you keep on a leash. Free art. I poured, expression blank, hands steady. If you're listening to this, and you've ever had to stand there while people talk about you like furniture, drop a comment. Tell me if you've been invisible like that. And if you want to hear how this invisible maid turned the entire table upside down, you know what to do. Stick with me, don't click away. I moved to the next glass. They didn't even lower their voices. How much do you think he pays her to keep quiet? The first man asked. Nay, platit, another said, with a laugh. He doesn't pay her. She's just grateful they let her in the house. My jaw wanted to clench. I didn't let it. Invisible people don't flinch. That's rule number 1. At the far end of the table, Corbin sat with his hands folded, his suit perfect, his jaw tight. Riurik's son, heir to all of this. Mafia prince in a tailored jacket. He didn't laugh. He didn't stop them either. Our eyes met for half a second as I stepped behind his chair to refill his glass. For a moment, the room fell away. His eyes were pale and tired, like he hadn't slept in months. My arm brushed his shoulder as I leaned in. The bare skin of his knuckles grazed the inside of my wrist. It was a small touch, completely accidental, but my pulse jumped like he'd grabbed my throat. He swallowed hard and pulled his hand back, fingers curling into a fist against his lap. He didn't apologize. He didn't have to. The apology was in his face, frustration, something like shame, something like want. That electric, forbidden inch of contact was the first intimate moment of the night. Not so much but enough to make my heart remember everything I'd promised it wouldn't feel around men like him. I stepped away, letting the tray anchor me again. Careful, the heavy one snorted in Russian, nodding toward me. If the maid learns a word of our language, we'll have to start being polite. They laughed again. Invisible, decoration, free art. I had heard it all before in different fonts. From teachers who said I had too much attitude for a girl from the laundromat. From the boy who stole my savings at 19 and left me drowning in debt, telling me, don't be dramatic, fifth, it's just money. They all had the same thing in common. They thought I didn't understand something. Tonight, these men thought I didn't understand Russian. That was their mistake. My grandmother used to come home from her cleaning job at a Russian-owned shipping company, hang her apron on the back of a chair in our tiny Brooklyn apartment and tell stories in 2 languages at once. I'd sit at her feet, listening to her switch between English and Russian like shuffling cards. They think the black cleaning lady is deaf, she'd say, laughing without humor. Let them think that. Invisible people see everything. That sentence lived in the back of my mind like a tattoo. I topped off another glass, kept my eyes down. The tray was stable, but my heartbeat wasn't. They thought they were safe because their money was spread across shell companies no one could trace. Cyprus is clean, one of them said. Dubai, too. The Americans can't find those accounts, even if they look for 100 years. Another smirked. We'll move a little more this week, before the audit. Let them chase smoke. I glided around the table, doing my job. I knew every number he was talking about. Not account numbers, those came later, but names of banks, names of islands, names of companies that technically consulted for each other. I'd heard them for months, and I remembered them the way other people remember song lyrics. I paused by Rurik, the man at the head of the table, the center of gravity in this beautiful, ugly room. His hair was silver, his eyes colder than the ice bucket on the sideboard. He didn't look up as I poured. "Tell your chef," he said to no one in particular. "The main course is acceptable." Then, in Russian to his guest beside him, "Americans eat with their eyes. You starve them with paperwork." The guest laughed. I swallowed the taste of iron in my mouth and stepped back, my eyes flickering once more to Corbin. He was staring at his plate, knife and fork lined up perfectly. He looked like a guilty man who hadn't committed his own crime yet, just watched someone else do it and said nothing. If he'd stood up, right then, and told them to shut up, maybe my next choice would have been softer, but he didn't. "Invisible people see everything," Grandma said. We also reach a point where silence feels like complicity. I felt it crack inside me right then. Someone snapped their fingers in my direction twice. A man with 2 smooth hands and a watch face that could buy my mother's building. "Girl," he said in English, not even glancing at my face. "More champagne. And smile. This is a celebration." I moved without rushing, picked up the chilled bottle, and came back to his side. I could feel the eyes on my back as I leaned in. I could feel the words they hadn't said yet. "Look at the way she walks," one whispered in Russian. "Like she owns the room. Only thing she owns is that uniform," another snickered. "When we're done, they'll replace her with a quieter one. There's a line you cross where your humiliation stops hurting and starts burning. Not the crying kind of hurt, the kind that heats your spine and makes your hand feel steady even when your heart's sprinting." I hit that line, right there, with their laughter floating over my head like cigar smoke. I set the bottle down, straightened my back, lifted my eyes from the tablecloth for the first time that night. Every cell in my body knew that once I opened my mouth, there was no going back. I could keep surviving in the shadows, or I could set the whole table on fire with words they thought I never learned. If you were standing in my shoes, what would you do? Stay quiet and safe, or speak and risk everything? Tell me below when this is over. I really want to know which side of that line you're on. I took a breath. Then, in clear, unshaking Russian, I said, «К тому времени, как подадут десерт, ваши счета на Кипре уже будут заморожены. By the time dessert is served, your accounts in Cyprus will already be frozen." Silence hit the room like a punch. Forks froze mid-air. The man who'd just snapped his fingers at me turned his head slowly, eyes wide, lips parted. What did she say? Someone whispered in English. But they knew. They understood every word. My voice didn't tremble, but inside my chest, everything was moving. 3 years of watching, listening, memorizing. 3 years of being girl and decoration and free art. 3 years of being their safest blind spot. Gone in one sentence. At the head of the table, Ryurik's hands slipped off his knife. His eyes slowly rose to my face, and for the first time since I'd started working there, he really looked at me. Not at my uniform, not at my tray, at me. "How do you know that language?" he asked in English, his tone very calm, which somehow made it worse. I could have backed down. I could have laughed it off, pretended I'd practiced a phrase from YouTube, played dumb. Instead, I doubled down. Still in Russian, I added, «И, возможно, в следующий раз вы подумаете, прежде чем обсуждать своих слуг как животных. And maybe next time, you'll think before you discuss your servants like animals." One of the men at the middle of the table hissed a curse under his breath and grabbed his phone off the linen. His screen was lit up with a wall of notifications. His face drained of color. "What is this?" he snapped, half in Russian, half in English. "The transfers, they're blocked. They froze." Another man checked his phone. Same thing. And another. And another. Around the table, screens lit like a storm. The intimacy of that moment had nothing to do with bodies and everything to do with power. It was like I'd stepped inside their skulls and whispered their worst fear at the exact second it came true. Corbin's chair scraped back a fraction. His eyes were locked on me, unreadable. There was something like awe in them, something like horror, something like a realization that the woman he'd once reached for in a dark hallway was the same woman who had just ripped a hole in his father's empire with a few soft syllables. "Who have you been talking to?" one guest demanded. No one answered. They all knew. Not who. What? Federal agents didn't give you courtesy calls when they froze your offshore accounts. They just did it. Ryurik stood up slowly, his napkin falling from his lap to the floor. The room seemed to tilt toward him. Even the air got tighter. He didn't raise his voice. "Phone's on the table," he said quietly, in English. Now, no one disobeyed. Dozens of phones hit the linen with shaking hands. He looked at me again, and the weight of his stare was almost a physical touch. A cold hand around my throat, an invisible grip on my spine. "How long?" he asked, switching back to Russian. "Have you understood every word in my house?" My tongue pressed against my teeth. For a second, I thought about Grandma again. Invisible people see everything. I didn't answer him, because right then, from the front of the mansion, there was a sound. A distant heavy knock. No, not a knock. A battering ram. The guards near the double doors stiffened, hands dropping toward their jackets. Every guest's head whipped around. Somewhere in the hallway, glass shattered. Then a voice thundered from the foyer, echoing down the corridor and slamming into the dining room like a wave. "Federal agents, nobody move." 3 years before that shout echoed through the mansion, I was 23, and staring at a final notice that might as well have been a death sentence. "Ms. Reed, you are 60 days past due," the woman on the phone said. Her voice was polite, the way a scalpel is clean. "If you don't make a minimum payment by Friday, your loan will go into collections." I was standing in the narrow kitchen of our second-floor apartment above the laundromat, the air thick with steam and bleach. My mother coughed from the couch in the living room, a dry rattle that made guilt crawl under my skin. I understand," I said. "It's just, I thought—" "You co-signed this loan," the woman cut in. "You're responsible for the balance whether the primary borrower is reachable or not." Reachable. That was a cute word for blocked your number and disappeared. "Right," I whispered. "Thank you." When I hung up, my hands shook. On the table sat another bill with a red stamp, my mother's medication. Next to it, a note from the landlord. Rent due. Last extension. "Baby?" Mama called weakly. "That them again." "Wrong number," I lied, tossing the notice onto the pile and forcing my voice to sound light. "Just some scammer." Her eyes were tired, rimmed red, but she smiled a little. "You don't have to protect me from everything, Vel." "Yes, I do," I said, heading toward the couch, kneeling beside her. "It's the only thing I'm good at." She reached up, smoothing my hair back from my face. "You're good at much more than that." If I was, I hadn't figured out how to turn it into rent money. Behind me, the door opened with a creak. My grandmother shuffled in, smelling like wind, mop water, and cheap. Cologne from the men whose trash she emptied at the shipping office. "Girls," she sighed, dropping her worn bag by the door. "They raised the security again at the docks. Dogs now. When you have to bring dogs, it's never about the cargo on the manifest." She saw my face and stopped walking. "What happened?" she asked. I didn't even try lying to her. Grandma could sniff out the truth like smoke. "The bank called," I said, "about Drion's loan. They're coming for me now." For a second, something dark flashed across her face. Not surprise, recognition. "How much?" she asked quietly. I told her. Her jaw tightened. "And your Prince Charming?" "Blocked." My laugh came out brittle. Last text he sent was, "Don't be dramatic. Fifth, it's just money." Mama closed her eyes like the words hurt her physically. Grandma shook her head slowly. "Just money," she repeated. "Easy to say when it's not your mama's pills or your landlord's patience." She came closer, lowering herself into the chair opposite Mama with the stiffness of someone whose knees had negotiated with too many stairs. "Come sit," she told me. I sat. She leaned her elbows on her knees, hands clasped. "Listen to me, Detka. Invisible people see everything. She always slipped into Russian when she wanted something to stick. Her accent curled soft and familiar around the syllables. Do you know why those men in suits at my job talk in Russian when they don't want the Americans to understand? She continued. Because they think they're smart? I muttered. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because they think nobody in the room is paying attention but them. They see me pushing the mop and think I don't know the difference between a shipping invoice and a money laundering scheme. She tapped her temple. But I listen. I remember. One day, all that information will be worth something. Maybe not for me, but for someone. You understand? I swallowed. How does that help me when the bank wants money by Friday? It doesn't, she said bluntly. Not today. Today you hustle. You take every hour you can get. You cut what you can cut. You keep your mother's medicine at the top of the list. And you learn. She lifted my chin. Learn, Valora. Languages, contracts, patterns. The world is run by people who think you will never read what they sign. That's your advantage. Her words scraped against the raw part of me that still ached for Drion's touch. The part that remembered his hands on my waist in the back of his beat-up car, his breath warm against my neck as we fogged up the windows on summer nights. For months I'd let myself believe that those intimate, small moments, his fingers tangled in my hair, his lips at my collarbone, his heartbeat under my ear, meant we were building something together. Turns out I was just co-signing my own humiliation. When he kissed me goodbye the last time, his hands firm on my hips, pulling me. Close in that alley behind the club, he'd said, "You're my ride or die, babe. When this thing hits, it's you and me on top." I'd believed him so much I signed papers I barely read. When I found out he'd drained the account, my brain played those kisses on a loop like a bad movie I couldn't walk out of. Grandma saw the softness in my face and hardened her voice. "And stop giving your heart to men who haven't earned your last name," she added. "You hear me?" I nodded, eyes burning. "I hear you. Good. Because next time, you don't get to say you didn't know better." That night, after Mama fell asleep and Grandma's snores rattled softly from the other room, I sat at the kitchen table with my cracked tablet and opened the language app Grandma had forced on me years ago. Russian. I repeated words out loud, whispering into the dim, dengi. Money. Bank. Shate. Account. Zamorozhen. Frozen. The irony wasn't lost on me. Maybe that's why, when the staffing agency called 2 weeks later with an exclusive opportunity, I didn't hang up right away. "Private household in Brooklyn Heights," the woman said, voice brisk and bright. "High pay, benefits, bonuses, live out. You'd be on a small team of staff. They need someone reliable, discreet, and comfortable with strict privacy." "What kind of household?" I asked. "The kind that needs NDAs," she said. "You'll be required to sign one before seeing the property." Interested? Every warning bell in my body rang at once. But then I looked at Mama's pill bottles. At the landlord's letter on the fridge. At the bank notice under a magnet shaped like a pineapple. "What's the pay?" I asked. She told me. My chest hurt. It was more than I'd ever made. Enough to dig us out of the hole if I was careful and lucky. "I'm interested," I said. The mansion looked like money tried to apologize and overshot. White stone, tall iron gate, glass everywhere, a view of the river that made our street above the laundromat feel like a different planet. Security cameras at every corner, 2 men with shoulders like refrigerators flanking the entrance. I stood there in my best thrift store blouse and iron slacks, clutching my small purse like a shield. A woman in a dark suit met me at the door. "You're Valora?" "Yes, ma'am." "Come in." She led me through a foyer so wide I could have parked my entire building in it. Marble floors, a curved staircase, a chandelier dripping light. "It's important that you understand what you're walking into," she said, her heels sharp against the marble. "You are not to ask questions about our employer's business, guests, or schedule. You will not discuss anything you see or hear in this house with anyone outside it. You will not take photos. You will not post online. You will answer to the house manager, not directly to the owner." "Who is the owner?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled without warmth. "You'll meet him if he feels like it." Sign first. The NDA was thick. I heard Grandma's voice in my head. Read, Valora. They think you won't. So I read. It didn't say the word Mafia. It said private individual with significant global interests. It said confidentiality. It said breach subject to civil and criminal penalties. My stomach twisted. But the pay, the benefits, the chance to not fall further behind. I signed. The first time I saw Rierik, he was standing at the end of the dining table, looking over a file while someone spoke to him in Russian. His suit was dark, his posture easy but coiled. He exuded the stillness of someone who didn't need to raise his voice to cause damage. "Sir," the house manager said, "this is the new maid. Valora Reed." He flicked his eyes over me, the way someone might glance at a new lamp. "She can polish silver and keep her mouth shut?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "Fine." Then to his associate, in Russian, he added, "Americans love hiring pretty help. It makes them feel powerful." My face warmed. The manager's hand brushed my elbow, a light warning. "I understand English only," I said softly, head bowed. He didn't care enough to answer. I learned fast. The staff moved like ghosts. Eyes down, voices low, leaving rooms before conversations began. The security team watched everything. The air always smelled like money and fear. It wasn't until the third night that I saw Corbin up close. I heard him first, footsteps down a side hallway, the faint rustle of a loosened tie. I was in the dining room, clearing glasses after a late meeting. The house was mostly quiet. My back was turned when he stepped in. "Leave those," he said. "The night team will get it." "I am the night team," I answered before I could stop myself. He paused. When I turned around, I expected a younger version of his father. Hard, cold, sharp. He was sharp, but differently. Dark hair, sleeves rolled up, tie undone, shadows under his eyes. Handsome in that tired, expensive way men look when they've had too much responsibility and not enough sleep. For a beat, we just looked at each other. "You're new," he said. "Yes, sir. What's your name?" "Valora." He said it slowly, like tasting it. "Who hired you?" "The agency, sir." "The house manager." He glanced at the glasses in my hand. "You don't have to stay this late. We have rotating shifts." I asked to stay. I lied, because I needed every hour I could get. His gaze dropped to the band of my wrist, where the tray had left a faint red mark. Without thinking, he stepped closer and gently took my forearm, angling it toward the light. The contact was unexpected, his fingers wrapping around my skin, thumb brushing the inside of my wrist. It was nothing by movie standards. PG-13 at best, but my breath hitched anyway. "You're leaving marks on yourself for a job that won't remember your last name," he said quietly. "Tell the manager I said you're not allowed more than 10 hours. She'll listen to me." His voice was softer than his father's, with the faintest trace of an accent buried under New York rhythm. Up close, I could see faint lines at the corners of his mouth, like he'd spent too much of his life clenching his jaw. He let go of my wrist, the ghost of his touch staying behind. It felt completely wrong that strangers' fingers could feel more protective in 5 seconds than my ex-boyfriend's ever had. I pulled my arm back, covering the mark with my other hand. "Thank you, sir." He studied me for another second, then stepped back. "Good night, Valora. Good night." Over the next week, I saw him in quick flashes. On the phone by the piano, voice low and frustrated. At the head of the smaller breakfast table, scrolling through emails while his father barked orders into another device. Watching the city from the balcony, hands gripping the rail like he wanted to jump and run at the same time. Always distant, always polite, never cruel. That made him more dangerous. Men who were openly awful were easy to guard against. Men who slipped kindness between the cracks of your day, who said your name instead of girl, who noticed when your wrist was sore. That's the type that made your heart start asking questions your brain couldn't afford. One evening, a week into the job, I was setting out wine glasses for a small dinner when my hand slipped. A crystal stem hit the floor and shattered into perfect accusing pieces. The sound echoed. Conversations in the hall stopped. The air changed. I stared at the broken glass, my stomach dropping through the floor. One of the other maids, Marcy, hissed under her breath, "Oh no!" Footsteps approached. Heavy, measured. Riorik. He stopped at the edge of the mess, looking down at it, then at me. "How much does that glass cost?" he asked the manager. She swallowed. "About $800, sir." My hands went cold. He shifted his attention back to me, his face unreadable. "Break it again," he said softly, "and you'll pay more than money." It wasn't about the glass. It was about reminding everyone who owned what, including our fear. I opened my mouth, then shut it. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. Before anyone could move, another voice cut in from the doorway. "I'll pay for it," Corbin said. We all turned. He walked into the dining room like he hadn't just stepped into a landmine. Hands in his pockets, jacket open, gaze steady on his father. "You will what?" Riorik asked. "I'll cover it," Corbin said calmly. "Charge it to my account. Accidents happen." His father's eyes narrowed. "You want to teach the staff that breaking things is free?" "I want to teach them that fear makes mistakes worse," Corbin replied. "We have a dinner in 15 minutes. Are we going to waste time bullying a maid, or are we going to make money?" The room went so quiet, I could hear the clock on the far wall. One of the guests hovering in the hallway chuckled nervously. The manager stared at the floor. Marcy didn't breathe. Riorik studied his son, a slow, assessing look that said this argument wasn't new between them. Then he smiled a small, dangerous smile. "Pay for it," he said. "And if she breaks another, it comes out of your share." "Fine," Corbin said. He stepped closer to me, eyes flicking to mine for a brief second. A silent, "Are you okay?" tucked between the glances. "Clean this up carefully," he said aloud, voice neutral. "We don't want anyone bleeding before dessert." "Yes, sir," I murmured. As he turned away, our shoulders brushed. Heat sparked along my skin. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't sweet. It was a tiny, dangerous promise. I'm not like him. Standing there with glass shards at my feet and my heart tripping in my chest, I realized something important. This house was full of monsters. Some roared, some whispered, and one of them, with tired eyes and a quiet defiance, had just put himself between me and his father for the first time. I bent to pick up the broken pieces, wondering if I'd just watched the smallest fracture in an empire, or the first crack in my own resolve not to fall for anybody ever again. The first time Corbin said my name in front of his father, the whole room tensed like it heard a gun cock. It was a smaller dinner, just a handful of men in dark suits and expensive watches. They were finishing dessert, laughing about something that didn't sound funny. I moved around the table with coffee, refilling cups, my mind on autopilot. "Girl," one of them said, without looking up. "More sugar." Before I could respond, Corbin lifted his head. "Her name is Valora," he said. The word was calm, but it dropped into the conversation like a stone into still water. Every eye turned toward him, then to me. Riurik's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Names make servants think they are family," he said softly. "We don't pay them for that." For a second, the air went thin. I stared at the coffee pot, my fingers tightening around the handle. I knew better than to speak. Corbin held his father's gaze. "We pay her to work," he said. "Using her name doesn't change that." The guest who'd called me girl shifted in his seat, suddenly very interested in his plate. The others looked between father and son, like they were at a tennis match with guns for rackets. Something unspoken passed between them, a warning from father, a line in the sand from son. Finally, Riorik gave a small, cold smile. "Fine," he said. "If you insist on knowing the names of things you can replace, that is your problem." The men laughed, but the sound was brittle now. I poured the sugar without shaking, but my cheeks burned. Being humiliated was one thing. Being defended in public by the man you were trying not to notice, that was its own kind of danger. Later that night, I found him in the kitchen. The staff had gone. The dishwasher hummed. The only light came from the under-cabinet strip above the sink. He was leaning against the counter, tie off, sleeves rolled up, a half-empty glass beside him. I stepped in, stopped when I realized he wasn't alone. Then I saw no one else was there. "Sorry, sir," I said. "I didn't know you were." "You can drop the sir when it's just us," he said quietly. "I can't," I replied. "House rules." He huffed a small laugh, no real humor in it. "House rules are the reason I drink alone in my own kitchen." I moved past him to the fridge to start my end-of-night check. Every time I passed, I could feel his eyes on me, not in the way his father's friends stared. There was weight, not hunger. Finally, he spoke again. "You shouldn't let them talk to you like that," he said. I opened the fridge door, letting the cool air hit my face. "Pretty sure I'm not the one they listen to." He pushed off the counter. "You listened tonight. When he said you were replaceable, I kept my back to him, pretending to inventory leftovers. He wasn't wrong. That's not the point. Then what is the point?" I turned, annoyed heat rising. "That you said my name like that makes everything okay. That I'm supposed to feel, what, grateful?" His eyes flicked to mine, surprised by the sharpness. "No," he said slowly. "You're not supposed to feel anything. I'm just saying you don't have to pretend it doesn't sting." "It stung for about 5 seconds," I lied. Then I remembered, I'm here to get paid, not to be respected. He watched me for a long beat, reading the parts I wasn't saying. "That's not nothing, you know," he said. "Wanting respect." I shrugged. "Rent doesn't take respect as a form of payment." He smiled, but it was sad. Neither does shame. For a moment, silence filled the room. Thick, but not empty. He came closer, careful, like he was approaching a skittish animal. "Can I ask you something?" He said. "You're the boss," I said. "You can ask anything." "I'm not the boss," he muttered. "I'm just the heir." I raised a brow. "Seems like the same thing from where I'm standing." His gaze dropped for a second. "What were you doing before this job?" he asked. "Dishwashing, cleaning, temp office work." I paused. "Trusting the wrong people." His eyes softened. "Someone hurt you?" I hated that the answer was written all over my face. Someone saw a girl who didn't know how loans worked and turned her into his personal bailout plan. He stepped even closer, so close I could see the darker ring around his irises. The kitchen felt too small suddenly. "He must be an idiot," Corbin said. My throat tightened. "Why?" "Because you're standing in a mansion full of rich men," he said quietly, "and you're still the best investment in the room." The compliment landed like a touch. His voice low, his eyes honest, his words hitting all the places that had been called too much and not enough my whole life. No hands on my waist, no lips on my neck. Just a sentence that saw me where I stood. I swallowed, looked away. "You don't know enough about me to say that," I said, but my voice was softer. "Maybe I'd like to," he replied. I felt my heartbeat jump. "If you're still here, listening," I murmured inside my own head, thinking about whoever might be on the other side of this story. "Don't lie. What would a line like that do to you? If it hits you too, don't forget to show it some love. Stories like this live on your reactions." Out loud I said, "That's not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because we don't live on the same planet," I told him. "You orbit money. I orbit overdue bills. That doesn't mean we can't share a sky," he said. He was good with words. That was his problem. And mine. Footsteps sounded in the hall. We stepped back at the same time, like guilty teenagers. The house manager poked her head in, looked between us, narrowed her eyes. "Everything okay here?" she asked. "Yes," I said quickly. "Just finishing up." She nodded slowly, then left. Corbin exhaled, like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. "I should go," he said. "You should," I agreed. He started to walk past me, then paused. "Valora?" "Yes?" "If I were just some guy in the city," he said, voice almost a whisper, "no mansion, no last name, no blood on my family's money. I'd ask you out for coffee, that's all." The words struck me harder than I expected. I didn't trust myself to answer, so I didn't. I turned back to the sink, letting the sound of running water swallow the moment. After that night, things shifted. He started showing up in small ways. Take your break. He'd tell me when dinners ran long. That's an order. He'd leave extra cash in the tip envelope on nights when the guests were particularly cruel. He'd intercept his father's anger when another staff member messed up, stepping in with a calm solution instead of a threat. The other maids noticed. "You sure you're not secretly engaged to him?" Marcy whispered one afternoon as we folded linen in the laundry room. "Because the way he looks at you, girl." "He looks at the problem his father caused," I said. "That's guilt, not romance." Marcy snorted. "I've had men look at me with guilt before. It didn't come with heat like that." I rolled my eyes, but her words stuck. Because she wasn't wrong. Sometimes I'd feel him before I saw him, like the temperature in a room changed when he walked in. Once, in the narrow corridor by the back stairs, we almost ran into each other. I was coming up, he was coming down. The hallway was too tight. We stopped, bodies inches apart. "Sorry," I murmured. His hand went to the wall beside my head, not touching me but caging us in anyway. His cologne was subtle, clean, expensive, faint hints of smoke and citrus. Close like that, it made my head swim. "You always apologize for existing?" he asked quietly. "Only when I'm in the way." "You're not in the way," he said, eyes flicking to my mouth and back. "You're the only part of this place that feels real." He looked like he might kiss me. My breath caught. My heart started pounding so loud I was sure someone would hear it. I tilted my chin up a fraction without meaning to. His gaze dropped again to my lips. His fingers flexed against the wall, inches from my hair. For a second, the whole world shrank to that narrow hallway, his shadow over mine, his breath mingling with mine. Then a door slammed somewhere above us. We jerked apart, pretending to be normal. "Excuse me," he said, retreating. "Of course," I answered, stepping aside. My skin buzzed for an hour after. I told myself it was nothing. I lied. Days turned into weeks. Patterns emerged. Ryurik's world revolved around numbers and power, meetings at strange hours, men arriving in black cars and leaving with lighter briefcases, Russians spoken freely when they wanted the staff to disappear mentally. I learned the schedule when the heavy hitters came, when the drunk ones loosened their tongues. I learned where they liked to sit, which ones tipped, which ones stared too long, which ones treated me like I was invisible, and which ones pretended not to. And I heard things I wasn't supposed to hear. One afternoon, I was dusting the picture frames in the upstairs hallway when voices drifted through the cracked door of the study. Male, Ryurik, female, sharp, cold, European. "I agreed because it's good for both sides," the woman said in accented English. "Not because I'm desperate for a husband." "I never said you were desperate, Ivana," Ryurik replied smoothly. "I said my son is a strong match. Your family needs stability. My empire needs more ports. This marriage cements both." I froze, feather duster in mid-air. "Marriage, Ivana." I edged closer, keeping my steps silent. "I don't care about your empire," Ivana snapped. "I care about assets, shares, control. You can keep the romance fairy tale for your American whores. I will never love your son, and I will dedicate every day of this marriage to making sure he understands that." The words were so familiar, in a twisted way. I'd heard something like them through the grapevine when the staff whispered about the arrangement. Hearing her say them out loud, with that much venom, made my stomach turn. There was a pause. "My son understands his duty," Ryurik said. "Love is not a requirement for this contract. Loyalty is." "To the money," she agreed, "not to him. Don't confuse those." I heard the clink of a glass being set down. "And what about the maid?" Ivana asked lightly. "The dark one. The one with eyes that follow your son around the room." My blood ran cold. "You think I don't see these things?" She went on. "Servants forget themselves. Princes forget their place. That is how empires fall. This is my house," Ryurik said, ice sliding under his words. "No servant will forget anything. My son is not stupid. He knows where his future lies. Good, Ivana said, because if he doesn't, I will remind him. Chairs scraped. Footsteps moved toward the door. I panicked. There was nowhere to go in that hallway. No side room, no stairwell close enough. The only thing I could do was turn my back to the door and pretend intense concern over a painting of some stormy seascape, like my life wasn't about to change. The door opened. Ivana stepped out first. Tall, glamorous in a way magazines try to sell but never quite get right. Eyes lined in perfect black, lips painted a deep red. She wore money like a second skin, diamond earrings, tailored dress, heels tapping out her confidence on the hardwood floor. Her gaze slid over me once, dismissive, then slid back, stopped. "Is the upstairs wing really that dusty?" she asked in smooth English. I kept my face neutral. "Just doing my rounds, ma'am." She tilted her head, studying me. Her eyes were the kind that didn't miss much. "What's your name?" she asked. "Valora." She repeated it slowly, like Corbin had, but there was no warmth in it. "Pretty," she said. "For a maid." "Thank you," I murmured. Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. I've always wondered why rich men insist on hiring pretty help. It complicates things. Doesn't it, Valora? I felt Riurik's presence before I saw him. He stepped into the doorway, taking in the scene with one sweeping glance. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "Not yet," Ivana said. Her eyes didn't leave my face. "I was just admiring your staff's presentation." Something in her tone made my skin crawl. She took a step closer to me, invading my space, her perfume heavy and cold. "You heard anything you shouldn't?" she asked softly, so only I could hear. My heart pounded. I met her eyes. "No, ma'am, I'm just here to clean." For a long moment, we just stared at each other, her testing, me holding the line. Then she smiled, all teeth. "Good girl," she said. "Let's keep it that way." She turned and walked down the hall, heels tapping, hips moving like she was already walking down an aisle. Riurik watched her go, then glanced at me. For half a second, I thought I saw something like suspicion flicker there. Then he nodded once and shut the study door. I stood alone in the hallway, the feather duster light in my hand, the weight of what I'd just heard crushing my chest. Corbin was being sold to a woman who promised to make his life miserable for the sake of ports and offshore accounts. And I was the maid who'd just become a problem simply for existing near the door at the wrong time. The night I heard her promise to make him miserable for the rest of his life, I was polishing a glass I'd already cleaned twice. The downstairs sitting room looked like a magazine spread, dark wood, gold accents, low lighting. Ivana stood near the fireplace, one hand on the mantel, diamonds catching the light. Corbin sat on the edge of a leather chair, shoulders tense, jaw tight. I was in the hallway again, invisible on purpose this time, moving slow, with my cleaning cart, close enough to hear through the half-open door. "I don't know how many times I need to say it," Ivana snapped. "I will never love you, and I will dedicate every day of this marriage to making sure you're miserable enough to remember that." She didn't scream. That made it worse. Her voice was level, her tone flat, like she was reciting terms of a contract. Inside the room, there was silence for a few seconds. I could picture the way Corbin's shoulders rose and fell. I'd seen that motion enough. "This isn't my idea," he said finally. "You know that." "I don't care whose idea it was," she said. "I care about what I get. My family gets ports, protection, a seat at your father's table. You get access to our docks, our lawyers, our influence. That is all this is. I will give you heirs because I must, not because I want to." Her heels clicked as she moved closer. I could hear the faint rustle of her dress. "What I will not do," she added, voice dropping, "is share my position with some soft-eyed maid who thinks you see her." My heart jumped into my throat. Corbin didn't answer quickly enough. "Say something," she demanded. "What do you want me to say?" He asked. "That I'm thrilled to give up my life so our fathers can play empire builder?" "I want you to say you understand the rules," she replied. "You marry me. You smile for photographs. You keep your hands off the help. You give me access to the accounts I want access to. In return, I don't make this harder than it has to be." There was a pause thick enough to choke on. Finally, he said quietly, "I understand." If he had said anything else, if he had said my name, if he had said he wanted out, if he had pushed back even a little, maybe I could have kept believing in the version of him that kept stepping in front of me when his father glared. He didn't. I stared at my reflection in the polished glass I was pretending to clean. I didn't look like a threat. I looked like what they said I was, a dark uniform in a bright house, easy to ignore, easy to replace. "Good," Ivana said. "Rehearsal is tomorrow. Don't be late to your own performance." Her heels clicked away. The door opened wider. I slid my cart forward, a few inches, making it look like I was just now passing. She swept out into the hall, phone already in hand, thumbs flying. She didn't bother looking at me this time. I waited till she disappeared around the corner, then risked a glance into the room. Corbin was still sitting on the edge of the chair, elbows on his knees, head bowed. He looked like someone had pulled the spine out of him. He must have felt my eyes because he lifted his head. Our gazes collided. For a second, all the roles fell away. Not heir and maid, not boss's son and staff. Just a man who'd just agreed to a life sentence and a woman who'd overheard every word. He stood up slowly. "Come in," he said. I should have kept walking. Instead, I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. The room smelled like smoke and expensive cologne. The fire hissed in the grate. Shadows licked the walls. "You heard that," he said. "Not a question." "I'm very good at my job," I replied. "I'm always where I'm needed." His mouth twisted. "Always where you're not supposed to be, you mean?" "Maybe," I said. But I didn't put myself in that conversation. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing a small line across the rug. "It's not what it sounds like." "Really?" I asked. "Because it sounded like you agreeing to let this woman turn your life into a prison, as long as the money flows. You don't understand how this world works, Valora." "Then, explain it to me," I snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like the world I already know, rich people using everybody else as chess pieces." He stopped pacing and turned to face me. His eyes burned. "You think I want this?" he asked. "You think I liked hearing that she plans to make me miserable for sport? My father has been arranging this since I was a teenager. Every time I tried to walk away, he reminded me exactly what happens to people who walk away from this family." "And what happens?" I asked, even though I already had an idea. "You saw what happened to that driver last month," he said quietly. I remembered. The man brought in bleeding, the whispered Russian about talking too much, the way the house went still afterward. "So, that's it," I said. "You sacrifice your whole life. You marry a woman who hates you. You let her spit on your name, your feelings, everything. And the only thing you fight is your father calling me replaceable." "She isn't wrong about one thing," he said. "You do walk around this house like you own it sometimes." "I walk around like I won't let anybody crush me into the rug," I shot back. "There's a difference." He took a step closer. "You think I don't notice you?" he asked. "You think I don't see how you keep this place running, while my father plays God and his friends play kings? Seeing me and choosing me are not the same thing," I said. "You agreed to let her wreck your life. You didn't say my name once. Because saying your name in that room could get you killed," he said, voice low. "Do you understand that? You're safer as someone they underestimate." "That's not safety," I said. "That's a cage with better lighting." We were close now. Too close. His breath warmed the air between us. The fire cast gold across his face, softening the hard lines. He reached up like he might touch my cheek, then stopped, his hand hovering inches away. "Valora," he murmured. "Don't," I said. "Don't say my name like that. Not after agreeing to marry a woman who wants to remind you of your place." His fingers curled back into a fist. The moment stretched, tight and fragile, like a wire about to snap. If you've ever been in that position, watching someone choose power over you, you know this feeling. And if you do, you're not alone. Your comments, your stories, they're part of why I tell mine. Out loud, I added. I made one bad decision at 19. I trusted a man who saw me as collateral. I'm not doing that again because this one wears better suits. His expression shuttered. Hurt flashed across his features, then pride stepped in. Maybe you misunderstood everything, he said coldly. Maybe this was never more than what it is. A distraction. The words hit me like a slap I didn't see coming. He knew exactly where to aim. A distraction, not a person, not a woman, not someone he respected enough to fight for, just a way to kill time while his life got arranged for him. Right, I said softly. Thank you for the clarification. He flinched, just barely. That's not what No, it's perfect, I cut in. Makes everything cleaner. You can marry your poison queen, stack your ports, and I can stop mistaking crumbs for meals. We stared at each other. Two people on opposite sides of a line neither of us had drawn, but both had chosen. He dropped his gaze first. You should get back to work, he said. I always do, I answered. I left the room without looking back. In that moment, something inside me finally clicked into place. I was done waiting for men to choose me when they were busy choosing money, fear, and their father's approval. Done letting their apologies and almost kisses rewrite the reality of their actions. I went back to being the maid, but not the same maid. Not the girl who thought invisibility was safety. The one who knew invisibility could also be a weapon. After the library, I avoided him. I kept my eyes down when he walked into rooms. I answered direct questions with yes sir and no sir, nothing more. If he lingered near the kitchen, I found another task across the house. If he tried to catch my eye during dinners, I let my gaze slide past him like he wasn't there. He noticed. I could feel his frustration like static whenever we shared a space. Once, in the back corridor, he stepped in front of my cart, blocking my path. Are we going to pretend nothing happened? He asked. I'm at work, I said. Nothing happened, remember? You know that's not true. I know you called me a distraction, I replied. Everything else is noise. His jaw clenched. I was angry. And I was stupid, I said. But I'm getting better at that part. He looked like he wanted to argue, to reach for me again, to undo the words he'd thrown like knives. Instead, he stepped aside. Do what you want, he muttered. You always do. Not always, I said. That's the problem. That night, the house reminded me what kind of world I was actually living in. I was in the kitchen late, scrubbing a pot, when the back door slammed open. 2 security men dragged someone in between them. At first, all I saw was blood. Then I recognized the man's face. He was one of their drivers, mid-30s, quiet, polite, tipped the staff out of his own pocket when guests didn't. His lip was split, one eye swelling shut. He staggered when they let go, catching himself on the counter with a groan. What happened? The chef whispered. Back to work, one guard snapped. Nobody saw anything. Ryurik entered a second later, moving with unhurried steps, like he was arriving to taste soup, not decide someone's fate. He looked at the driver, then at the guards. What did he do? He asked in Russian. He talked to the feds, one guard answered. We have a friend in the precinct. Says this one has been meeting with someone in a suit. Too many questions. The driver shook his head weakly. I didn't say anything. He croaked in English. I swear. Ryurik switched to English too, for the staff's sake, his tone smooth and mild. You work for me, he said. You drive my cars. You see my guests. You hear conversations that don't belong to you. And you thought you could flirt with law enforcement like they are some waitress at a bar? I didn't. I am very generous, you know, Ryurik continued, ignoring him. I pay well. I protect my own. But betrayal I do not tolerate. The room was quiet except for the dishwasher and the driver's labored breathing. I stood near the sink, my hands still on the pot, my heart beating out a drum solo in my chest. The conversation slid back into Russian. Make an example, Ryurik said. People need reminders. One of the guards nodded, jaw tight. What about the maid? He asked, glancing in my direction. She hears everything. My blood turned to ice. Every hair on my arms stood up. Riurik's gaze followed his, landing on me. His eyes were sharp, assessing, measuring. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then he smiled a thin, humorless smile. "She lives," he said, still in Russian. "As long as she stays quiet." The guards chuckled. The driver flinched. The threat slipped into my bones, quiet and precise. "As long as she stays quiet." If you've ever had someone look you in the face and tell you, without saying the exact words, that your life depends on your silence, you know the way your body remembers it. I can still feel that smile on my skin. They dragged the driver out through the side door. No one asked where. No one needed to. The kitchen manager told us to finish cleaning and go home. Everyone moved faster than usual, eyes down, mouths shut. On the subway that night, pressed between strangers and the smell of metal and sweat, I stared at my reflection in the window. The maid who had been a distraction, the girl who understood every word they said in a language they thought I was too stupid to learn, the woman whose life had just been hung on the condition of her silence. Invisible people see everything. But I realized something important then, gripping the pole as the train lurched. Seeing everything and doing nothing makes you part of the problem. I could stay quiet and hope the storm never reached me. Or I could pick a side and accept that storms don't care who started them. That was the night I decided. If I was going to be in this house, around these men, hearing about their accounts and their crimes, I wasn't going to be their unpaid accomplice. I wasn't going to die someone's distraction. I was going to become the reason their safe world finally cracked. The next morning, I walked into the lion's den with my heart in my throat and my grandmother's voice in my head. Not the mansion. The federal building. Grey stone, metal detectors, the flag snapping overhead in the wind. People in suits going in and out, talking into phones, holding folders like shields. The kind of place I'd always passed by on the bus and assumed had nothing to do with people like me. I stood across the street at first, clutching my cheap purse so hard my fingers ached. Invisible people see everything, Grandma used to say. Today I was about to make myself seen on purpose. The question sat heavy on my tongue. Was I brave or stupid? I thought about the driver they dragged in bleeding. The threat in Riurik's smile. She lives as long as she stays quiet. I thought about the way those men laughed as they talked about me like luggage and talked about money like God. I thought about Mama's wheezing breaths when she slept. Then I stepped off the curb and crossed the street. Inside, the air was cooler. A guard motioned me toward the metal detector. I put my purse on the belt, walked through, flinched at the beep. "Take off your watch," he said. "I don't have one," I muttered. He sighed, waved me back, scanned me again. This time, it stayed quiet. "What's your business today?" he asked, voice bored. I swallowed. "I need to talk to someone about organized crime." He blinked. "You... what?" I could feel people behind me slowing down, curious. "I work in a house," I said, lowering my voice. "Brooklyn Heights, Russians, money, offshore accounts. I hear things. I speak Russian. I think..." I took a breath. "I think I can help you." For the first time, his boredom cracked. He picked up a phone. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a small interview room with a table, 3 chairs, and walls the color of dust. A woman in a navy suit walked in with a folder and a coffee that smelled better than anything I could afford. She was black, maybe mid-30s, hair in a neat twist, eyes sharp and tired at the same time. "I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney Arlene Price," she said, sitting across from me. "You're Valora Reed?" "Yes." She studied me. "You told the lobby officer you work in a house with Russians and offshore accounts. Do you know what those words mean? Or are you repeating gossip?" I lifted my chin a little. "I know what they mean," I said. "And I know where the money goes when they think nobody's listening." Her gaze didn't soften. "You work for who?" "I signed an NDA," I said. "I think you already know the name on that mailbox." Her jaw ticked, just slightly. She opened the folder. There were pictures clipped inside, Satellite images, copies of documents, photos, of people in suits that looked a lot like the ones around Ryurik's table. We know a lot of names, she said. That doesn't mean we can prove what they're doing. So start from the beginning and speak in English. We're not recording a language exam. They think the maid doesn't understand Russian, I said. That's their first mistake. A ghost of a smile touched the corner of her mouth. You understand Russian. I grew up with it in my kitchen, I said. My grandmother cleaned offices for a shipping company. She brought it home with the mop water. And you've heard. What? Exactly. I took a breath. Then I spoke. At first, it was just words. Names of companies. Names of banks overseas. The routes they joked about. The way they referred to moving product and moving money like they were talking about two sides of the same coin. I told her about Cyprus, Dubai, the islands I'd only ever seen in travel ads. She kept interrupting. Spell that name. How do you know the routing is there? Who said that exact phrase? I answered. Her pen moved fast. Then, mid-sentence, without planning to, I switched. Он сказал, что аудит будет не проблема, если судья останется в кармане, I said. He said the audit would be no problem if the judge stayed in their pocket. Her pen stopped. She looked up slowly. Say that again, she said. I repeated it, in Russian, then in English. Something changed in the room. She leaned back, folded her arms, studied me like I was a puzzle that had just clicked. You're fluent, she murmured. Yes. You've been in that house. How long? Almost a year. And you've been hearing this kind of talk. How often? Weekly, I said. Sometimes daily. They switch to Russian when they want us to mentally disappear. And you never told anyone before today? I told my reflection on the subway, I said. It didn't do much. One of her eyebrows lifted. Why now? I thought of last night. The driver, the blood, the guard looking at me and asking, what about the maid? I realized staying quiet wasn't safe, I said. It's just slower. She nodded once. That's the first smart thing you've said today. I flinched. And the rest? We'll see, she replied. Look, Valora. This isn't some movie where you walk in, give us a few juicy quotes, and we go kick down doors this afternoon. We've been trying to untangle these people for years. The money, the shell corporations, the political cover. What you're offering is details. Confirmation. That's valuable, but it's also dangerous. For you, for anyone you live with. I thought of Mama. Her pill bottles lined up like soldiers on the counter. Grandma's old framed wedding picture on the wall, slightly crooked. What does dangerous look like? I asked quietly. Her eyes met mine. It looks like somebody realizing you're talking to us, she said. It looks like threats. It looks like accidents. It looks like you never walking out of that house again. Silence sat between us. If you walk away right now, she added, we forget your name. You go back to your life and hope nobody else talks too much around you. If you don't walk away, you go back into that mansion wired for sound. You become the difference between us making a case big enough to actually put them away, or watching them shrug off another slap on the wrist. She didn't sugarcoat it. I appreciated that. Do people like me ever come out of this okay? I asked. Sometimes, she said. Sometimes they disappear into witness protection. New name, new city, new life. Sometimes they get monetary compensation through seized assets or whistleblower statutes. Sometimes they just get the satisfaction of knowing they weren't in the background when history got written. And sometimes? I asked. She held my gaze. Didn't answer. The silence was loud enough. If you're hearing this and thinking, I'd just keep my head down, rent is due either way, I get it. Survival feels holy when you've never had enough. But ask yourself, how long can you live next to rot before it starts eating you too? Let me know in the comments what you think. Would you walk out of that room? Or lean in like I did? I leaned in. What do you need from me? I asked. A lot, she said. First, we verify. We cross what you're saying with what we already know. Second, we decide whether bringing you in as a confidential informant makes sense. That would mean you're ours, wearing a wire sometimes, passing us documents if you see them, recording conversations when you can. You'd protect my mother? We'd do what we can, she said. But no one can promise you absolute safety. Not me. Not the government. Not even God, if you believe in him. I believe in patterns, I said. And I know how this one ends if nobody breaks it. She nodded slowly. I'm going to bring in an agent, she said. He'll ask you the same questions. Don't take it personally. It's his job to doubt people. Doubt is healthy, I muttered. Trust almost got me evicted. She almost smiled again. You have a sharp mouth. Has that ever gotten you in trouble? All the time. Her expression turned serious. Try to keep it under control in that house. An hour later, after another round of questions, after repeating the same stories till my throat felt sore, I found myself staring at a thin stack of papers on the table. Confidential informant agreement. You don't have to sign this today, Araline said. You can go home, think, talk to your pillow, then come back. If I go home, I won't come back, I said. You sure about that? I know myself, I replied. I'll convince myself it's someone else's problem. I'll tell myself I can't afford to make enemies that powerful. I'll tuck my fear into my uniform and keep serving their drinks. And I'll hate myself a little more every time I hear them laugh about how untouchable they are. She watched me for a moment, then slid a pen across the table. Once you sign, she said, you're in. We'll do everything we can for you. But you'll be walking into a house full of people who kill their own when they smell disloyalty. I thought about Corbin, the way his hand had wrapped around my wrist in the kitchen, the way his voice had dropped when he told me I was the best investment in the room, the way he'd called me a distraction when he was scared. Some part of me still wanted to believe he could step away, that under all that money and fear, there was a man who could choose right over rich. But this wasn't about him. This was about the people who would never choose right unless someone forced their hand. I picked up the pen. My hand shook once, then steadied. It felt like nothing at first, just ink on paper. Letters I'd written 1,000 times on job applications, lease agreements, forms that never seemed to care if I lived or starved. But this time, it meant something different. I wasn't just acknowledging rules. I was choosing a side. Araline took the papers, slid them into the folder, and stood. Okay, Valora, she said. If we're doing this, we're doing it carefully. No hero stunts, no freelance justice. You're not Batman. You're a maid with good ears and a lot of courage. That's enough. I didn't sign up to be a hero, I said. I signed up to stop feeling like a coward. She nodded. Sometimes those are the same thing. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small object. It looked like a button. Plain, black, nothing special. This is a mic, she said. We won't use it every day, only when we need something specific. You'll have ways to signal us if you're in over your head. We'll go over all of that before you leave. I held the little device in my palm. It was lighter than it looked. Feels small, I said. That's the point, she replied. Big things hide in small places. For a second, an image flashed in my head, that narrow hallway in the mansion, Corbin's body close. To mine, his hand on the wall by my head, his eyes searching my face like it held a way out. That had felt like a big thing too. Now I knew it was just a moment between storms. Will I ever get a normal life after this? I asked suddenly. She didn't rush to answer. Define normal, she said finally. Rent on time. Mom's meds covered. A job that doesn't involve blood or offshore accounts. Maybe someone who doesn't have to pick between me and staying alive. Her lips pressed together briefly, like she was tasting the unfairness of the question. I can't promise all that, she said. I can promise you'll be able to look in the mirror and know you didn't just let monsters keep eating. I nodded slowly. That's something, I said. When we finished the briefing, when they'd told me where to meet, how to call from a payphone if my phone felt suspicious, how to keep my expression neutral. Even when I heard something that made my skin crawl, I walked back out into the daylight. The sun felt different, brighter and colder at the same time. I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the sky. Nothing up there had changed. Everything in my life had. I took the train back to Brooklyn Heights, the mic tucked into a pocket in my purse, my throat dry. I watched my reflection blur in the dark window, superimposed over passing buildings. Maid, daughter, informant. Don't you dare die for these people, I whispered to myself. At the mansion gate, the guard checked my ID like always. The iron bars swung open. As I walked up that long stone driveway, the house loomed, big and beautiful, and rotten to the core. Nobody at the door knew I had just signed papers that made me the most dangerous person inside. Nobody knew that the quiet black maid with the steady hands and the too-sharp mouth was now carrying more than a tray. I smoothed my uniform, adjusted my hair, and stepped through the front door like it was any other day. But between my ribs, my heart counted off the new reality. Every word I heard from now on could be the one that finally brought this house down. The first time I walked back into the mansion wearing a wire, I swear the walls knew. Nothing looked different. The foyer still glowed with soft light. The marble still shone. The chandelier still hung like a threat over the grand staircase. The house manager still greeted me with that tight professional smile. But my body knew. The mic was small, tucked under the seam of my collar, taped to my skin. A thin thread of metal and plastic that turned my chest into a transmitter. I felt it like a second heartbeat. "Valora, we have a meeting tonight," the house manager said briskly. "Mr. Riorick and a few guests. You're on service with Marcy, black coffee. No deserts until he says. You know the drill." "Yes," I said. "I know the drill." I knew more than the drill now. I knew the stakes. In the staff room, Marcy looked me over as we pulled on fresh aprons. "You okay?" she asked. "You're quiet." "I'm always quiet," I said. "No, you're contained," she said. "There's a difference." "I'm fine." "Liar," she muttered affectionately. She knew me well enough to hear the tremor under my calm. She just didn't know why it was there. Out in the dining room, a fresh white cloth stretched across the table, like someone had skinned a cloud. The silverware lined up in perfect formation. I could see my own warped reflection in the polished spoons. "Invisible people see everything," Grandma whispered in my head. Tonight, invisible people recorded everything too. The guests arrived in a wave of cologne and arrogance. Voices in English at first, handshakes, fake smiles. Then, when they settled, when the drinks were poured and the house manager had left the room, the language shifted. Russian rolled over the table like smoke. "Cyprus was a slap," one man said. "We need new routes. Panama, maybe Nigeria. We can't rush," another replied. "They're watching. The Americans think freezing a few accounts makes them smart." "Let them think it," a third said. "We move cash where they don't see." I moved silently between chairs, topping off glasses, pretending not to understand. My heart pounded, not just from fear, from the awareness that somewhere, blocks away or in a van outside, someone was listening to all of this through a little wire stuck to my skin. "Look at her," one man said, nodding toward me as I bent to collect a plate. "These Americans, they hire pretty maids, then act shocked when their sons get distracted." I kept my face blank. "Relax," another replied in Russian. "The son is getting married. The maid will be replaced." Ivana wasn't there, but her shadow was. As I leaned in to place a cup, one of the guards inside the room stepped closer, watching me. Too closely. My throat went dry. He frowned. "Wait." My pulse spiked. He reached out suddenly and brushed something off my collar. At least, that's what it looked like. His fingers paused, grazing close enough to make my skin prickle. For a terrifying half-second, I thought he felt the tape. Then he flicked an imaginary crumb onto the floor and grunted. "Don't spill." "Yes, sir," I said, voice steady with a calm I didn't feel. He turned away. I kept breathing. If you're still with me right now, feeling your own heart pick up, don't pretend you're not invested. Drop a still here in the comments when this ends, and don't forget, your likes and subs are the only shield storytellers like me have against the real-life algorithms of people like these. When the meeting finally broke, When the guests stood and lied to each other with handshakes at the door, I cleared the table on autopilot. "Long night," Marcy said, stacking plates. "You sure you're okay? You look like you just ran a marathon." "Just tired," I said. "Too much coffee steam." She snorted. "You're the only person I know who can make exhaustion sound poetic." Later, in the tiny bathroom off the laundry room, I locked the door and lifted my collar with shaking fingers, peeling the tape off my skin. The mic came away with it, light but heavy. I dropped it into a small zip bag, tucked it into my bra, and tried not to think about the fact that my chest now held both my heartbeat and evidence. At the safe house, 2 hours later, Araline played back the audio. We sat at a scarred table in a plain apartment that smelled like stale coffee and takeout. She had her laptop open, headphones around her neck, the little mic in front of her like a guilty jewel. When the men's voices oozed through the speakers, talk of countries, banks, judges, the muscles in her jaw moved. "This is good," she said. "Very good. We can tie this to wires we already have. Dates, amounts, jurisdictions." "You're doing real work, Valora." "Feels like I'm just carrying coffee," I said. "Welcome to the world," she replied. "Most revolutions start with someone doing something small really well." She paused, rewound, played one section again. The part where the guard almost touched my collar. "You almost got flagged," she said quietly. "I know. I need you to be more careful." I stared at the wood grain. "What am I supposed to do when a man like that decides I'm uninteresting?" I asked. "Tell him to back off?" "Fair point," she said. "Then listen, we can't keep you wired every night. Too risky. From now on, we plan specific recordings, specific meetings. You're not a walking microphone. You're a person. Remember that." "Sometimes feels like the line is blurry," I said. "Especially when I'm back there." She studied me. "How are you doing with everything else?" "You mean with the sun?" I asked, because dancing around it felt childish. "Yeah," she said. "You've mentioned him a lot. Corbin." I shrugged. "He's complicated." "Complicated is code for trouble," she said. "You know that, right?" "I know I can't afford to be stupid about him," I said. "Or anyone." "Good." She nodded. "Because if he finds out what you're doing before we're ready, I don't know which way he'll break, and I don't like variables I can't read." Neither did I. Back at the mansion, the days blurred into a pattern of pretending nothing had changed. Wake up, put on the uniform, walk past the guards who would kill me if they knew who else I worked for, pour coffee for men who joked about countries like playgrounds, hide in the laundry room to breathe. And always there was him. Corbin. The first week after I signed with the feds, I tried to avoid him completely. I timed my routes through the house around his patterns. If he was in the study, I took the back stairs. If he was on the balcony, I stayed in the kitchen. If we ended up in the same room, I kept my eyes on the floor. He noticed. One afternoon, I was restocking the bar cart in the lounge when the door clicked shut behind me. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. "Did I start smelling worse?" Corbin asked, voice dry. "Or did you decide I'm contagious?" I closed the cabinet slowly, straightened up. "I'm working," I said, keeping my tone flat. "I don't have time to loiter." He moved closer, footsteps soft on the rug. "You had time before," he said. "Enough to call me out when I deserved it." "That was a mistake," I replied. "I like my job. I'd like to keep it." He snorted. "Since when do you care about house rules that much?" "Since I realized what happens to people your father thinks are disloyal," I said. "I've seen enough examples." His expression tightened. "That's not why you're avoiding me, and you know it." "Maybe I just learned my lesson," I said. "Rich men with tired eyes and nice words are still rich men. Even if they pay for broken glasses." There was a flicker of hurt there, quick and real, before pride covered it. "You're mad because I said you were a distraction," he said. "I'm clear because you did," I corrected. "Anger fades. Clarity stays." He stepped in front of the cart, blocking my way. He wasn't touching me, but his nearness felt like its own kind of contact. I could smell his cologne again, clean with that hint of smoke. "You think I meant that?" he asked quietly. "You think I look at you and see something optional? I think you look at me and see something that makes you feel guilty," I said. "Which is worse. That's not fair. Neither is any of this," I snapped, then lowered my voice. "Your arranged fiancé wants to make you miserable. Your father threatens lives like it's a hobby. I'm a Maid one bad mood away from being examples. Life's not fair, Corbin. I just don't have time to pretend it is." We were close enough now that if either of us leaned an inch, we'd be touching. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then back up. His hand rose, hesitated, then settled on the edge of the bar cart instead. "Valora," he whispered. I know you think I'm just like him, but I'm trying to do what?" I cut in, "To feel less bad while the money keeps flowing." "No." His voice thickened. "To get out." That made me pause. "Out of what?" I asked. "The house, the family, the country, all of it," he said. "The business, the way they use people. I've been meeting with people, trying to figure out what happens if I walk away." My heart thudded for a different reason now. "What people?" I asked. "Lawyers," he said. "Accountants. People who understand things my father pretends are too complicated for me. Not feds then. Not yet." "But you still agreed to marry her," I said. His face closed. "You think I have a choice? You heard what she said. You've seen what my father does. I'm trying to build an escape route without setting the house on fire until I'm out of it." A bitter laugh broke from my chest. "Newsflash," I said. "The house is already on fire. You're just standing closer to the exits." His eyes met mine, something raw flickering there. "You really hate me that much now?" he asked. I swallowed. "I don't hate you," I said. "I hate what you represent. And I hate that some messed up part of me still wants to believe you could be different." He sucked in a breath. We stared at each other, the air between us buzzing like a live wire. "Look," he said finally, voice low, "if you ever need something, to get away, to start over, I have access to things, accounts that are clean, investments no one knows about yet. I can—" He broke off, shook his head. "You know what? Forget it. You'd probably throw it back at me anyway." "I probably would," I said. But something in my chest softened a fraction. There it was again, that dangerous intimacy. No kisses, no clothes on the floor, just a man offering you a way out with his eyes as much as his words, and you knowing you can't afford to take it. "I have to get back to work," I said. He stepped aside. "Yeah," he murmured. "So do I." As I walked past him, my arm brushed his. The contact was small, accidental, but my skin reacted like someone had plugged me into a socket. If this story is pulling something up in you, old choices, old almost loves, don't bury it. When we're done, tell me about the time you wanted to trust someone but knew better. Your voice matters more than theirs ever did. The night it all changed with him and the Russian came back into the room, it started with a stupid mistake. My mistake. I was in the pantry, alone, double, checking the list of phrases I'd scribbled. On a scrap of paper for the next time, the feds needed a recording. Things the men said a lot. Ways they phrased their crimes. "Sudievy kamani," I whispered under my breath. "Judge in the pocket. Dengi cherez Panamu." I murmured. "Money through Panama. Paramestim vse perd auditum. We'll move everything before the audit." Hearing the words out loud helped brand them in my memory. I didn't realize how it sounded until a shadow fell across the doorway. "What did you just say?" a voice asked behind me. I froze. My hand crumpled the scrap of paper. I turned slowly. Corbin stood in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame, eyes wide, face pale. I scrambled for something, anything, just talking to myself, I said. Practicing, in Russian. He cut in. My stomach dropped. He stepped into the pantry, shutting the door behind him with a soft click. "Say it again," he said. I swallowed. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," he snapped. "Don't lie to me. Not about this." His anger wasn't loud, It was precise. It felt more dangerous than his father's shouting. "How long?" he asked, voice low and shaking. "Have you understood everything we've been saying in that language?" I could hear my own pulse in my ears. We were standing so close now that I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his throat bobbed when he swallowed. "You grew up with it in your kitchen, didn't you?" he said. "You mentioned it once. I thought you were just picking up words, but you're fluent. You have been this whole time." Silence pressed in. He took another step closer, crowding the small space, his body inches from mine, his eyes burning. "Who exactly are you working for, Valora?" he whispered. "Because if it's not my father, I need to know if I'm sleeping in a house with someone who's about to get us all killed. The pantry is too small a room to hold this much fear." Corbin's body fills the doorway, his shoulders blocking the light from the kitchen. The air smells like coffee grounds and lemons. The scrap of paper is crumpled in my fist, my pulse drumming against it. "Answer me," he says. "How long have you understood Russian?" My mouth is dry. "A while," I say finally. "How long is a while, Valora?" His voice is low, dangerous. "Months? The entire time you've been here." I lift my chin, even though my insides feel like jelly. "Since before I walked through that door," I say. "I grew up with it. My grandmother brought it home in her mop bucket." He stares at me like he doesn't recognize the person in front of him. "So all those nights," he says slowly, "those dinners, those meetings, you understood every single insult, every threat, every plan." "Yes." "And you never said anything?" I laugh once, short and sharp. "To who?" "Your father." "Excuse me, sir, could you stop talking about laundering money while you insult my skin tone in your second language?" He flinches. "That's not what I meant, isn't it?" I ask. He scrubs a hand over his face, pacing a tight line in front of the shelves. "God," he mutters, "you've been walking around with all of this in your head, and I thought you were just, what, a mystery I wanted to figure out." I don't miss the slip. "Past tense," I ask. "Wanted?" He looks at me then, really looks. And the anger softens around the edges. "Still do," he admits, voice rough. "That's the problem." He steps closer again, close enough that if I exhale too hard, my chest will brush his. His eyes search mine, frantic and focused at the same time. "Who are you working for?" he asks. "Because if it's a rival family, if you're feeding them what you hear here, they won't hesitate to burn this place to the ground with you in it." I swallow. If I lie and he catches me, it's over. If I tell the full truth and he breaks under pressure, it's over faster. "I'm working for myself," I say carefully. "I'm working for my mother who needs meds, and my grandmother's ghost who told me invisible people see everything. I'm working for the part of me that got tired of being their unpaid accomplice." "That's a beautiful speech," he snaps quietly. It doesn't answer the question. His hand comes up, fingers grazing my jaw. It's not a grab, not a threat, just a touch that feels like a demand. My skin tingles where he brushes me, my body betraying me in all the basic human ways, even while my brain yells at me to keep distance. "Tell me," he says softly, "are you feeding the cops, the feds? Somebody is watching those accounts. They're not as safe as they used to be. I've seen the flags. The wire isn't on me today, but his words make my heart stutter anyway. "I'm not stupid," he continues, thumb tracing the line of my jaw in a way that barely counts as a caress, but sets off every nerve ending I have. "You walk different now. You watch different. You're not just trying to survive. You're aiming." He's right. I hate that he's right. If I say yes, I answer quietly. What happens next? You run to your father, tell him the maid is a problem? You lock the doors? Make an example? His fingers tighten just slightly, not enough to hurt, just enough to say he's capable. "If you're talking to the wrong people," he says, "you'll get us all killed. If you're talking to the right people, you still might get yourself killed." Either way, I'm the idiot standing in the middle. His forehead touches mine. It's small, that contact. No lips, no hands on hips, just skin to skin, warm and desperate, the kind of intimacy that feels more dangerous. than any makeout in a teen movie because of everything attached to it. Please, he whispers, don't make me guess. I'm not working for a rival family, I say, finally giving him one solid piece of ground. That's all I can tell you. His breath stirs my hair. So it is the government, he murmurs. Or some part of it. Silence answers for me. He pulls back just enough to look me in the eyes. His expression cracks open, and for the first time I see naked fear there. Not for himself, for me. Do you have any idea what happens to people in this life when they smell law on them? He asks. It's not like your ex skipping town with your money, Valora. They don't just ghost you. They erase you. That's why I didn't tell you, I say. You're too close to the fire. If you slip, even by accident, you think I'd sell you out to him? His voice breaks on the last word, insulted and wounded at once. I think you're under more pressure than I can see, I say. And I think your survival instinct is strong. That's not an insult. It's a fact. His jaw clenches. He takes a step back, runs both hands through his hair, like he's trying to pull thoughts straight. I've been talking to people too, he blurts. Not just lawyers, people who know things about RICO, forfeiture, cooperation agreements. My chest tightens. With who? I ask. A friend introduced me to someone in the U.S. Attorney's office months ago, he says. Off the record. I didn't give them much, just a feel for what I'm trapped in. I've been moving my own assets, getting distance. I thought I was being careful, playing both sides until I could choose one without dying. I blink. That someone, I say slowly. Was her name Araline? His eyes widen a fraction. Yeah, he says. How do you? Because of course, Brooklyn is big, the world is wide. And yet, somehow, the son and the maid walked into the same woman's office from opposite directions, carrying different versions of the same house in their hands. I almost laugh. It comes out as a shaky exhale instead. Of course it was, I mutter. He stares at me. You've met her too, he says. Not a question. I nod once. For a second, everything in the pantry shifts. We're not just on opposite sides of a line anymore. We're two people standing dead center on a fault line that's about to crack open. Are we on the same side? He asks, voice barely above a whisper. Depends what side you're actually on, I reply. The one that wants out, or the one that still thinks he can control the fire without getting burned. His hand finds my wrist again, fingers wrapping around the place he touched in the kitchen that first week. This time, the grip is tighter. I'm on the side that doesn't want my father's empire to decide who lives and who dies, he says. I'm on the side that doesn't want you ending up like that driver just because you finally stopped swallowing their poison in silence. The sincerity in his eyes knocks the breath out of me. If you're listening and you've ever had someone look at you like that, in the worst place, at the worst time, and still pick you over their comfort, you know how disarming it is. That doesn't mean you trust them blindly. It just means your heart remembers. If this is hitting somewhere real for you, don't just ghost the feeling. When we're done, tell me how you'd handle a man standing between love and loyalty like this. I'm reading. We don't get to just be on the same side because we both talk to the same woman, I say, trying to keep my head clear. We need to be smart. You're a liability as much as you're an asset, Corbin. That's mutual. He fires back. You think I sleep easy knowing the only person in this house with a conscience is walking around wired? One slip, one wrong glance from the wrong guard, and they won't just kill you. They'll use you as a message. He's right. Again, I didn't ask you to protect me, I say. Maybe I'm asking you to let me try, he says. The words land between us, warm and terrifying. He leans in, just a fraction, like he might kiss me. Our noses brush. My lips part on instinct against the urge that's been building for months. Kitchen, hallway, library, all the almost stacking in my chest. At the last second, he stops and rests his forehead against mine again instead. We can't, he whispers. I know, I whisper back. That doesn't mean I don't want to. I know that too. We stand there breathing each other's air, letting the moment hang in that fragile space between want and self-preservation. It's the most intimate thing we've done, and we're not even kissing. Then, a heel clicks in the hallway. Ivana. Her silhouette passes the pantry door, a sleek shadow on expensive flooring. The handle rattles once, lightly, like she's testing it. My whole body goes still. Corbin mouths don't move, his hand tightening around my wrist. The handle doesn't turn. Her footsteps move on. We don't let go of each other until the sound fades. Later that evening, after the pantry confession, there's a smaller gathering in Ryurik's private lounge. Just family and closest allies, which is code for the people who could destroy you most efficiently if they felt like it. I'm serving drinks. Corbin sits on a low armchair, face composed, hands steady. Ivana perches on the arm like she owns both the chair and the man in it. Her manicured hand rests on his shoulder, possessive and sharp. Your accounts in Dubai performed well this quarter, one man says in Russian, flipping through papers. We should expand. We proceed carefully, Ryurik replies. They're watching European routes now. The Americans are not as dumb as they look. Their regulators are slow, someone else says. We just move faster. Ivana's eyes spark. Not if there's a leak, she says. The room quiets, just a little. A leak, Ryurik repeats. She sips her drink. I heard something earlier, she says, about accounts and not as safe as they used to be. From a very interesting source. My hands tighten around the tray. Corbin's shoulders stiffen under her touch. Who was speaking? Ryurik asks, tone deceptively lazy. She flicks her gaze to Corbin. You, she says. The room's attention swings. I was reminding your son, she goes on, that trusting the wrong people can be expensive. That's all. The implication is enough. You don't say wrong people in this house without everyone thinking informants or rats. I trust my blood, Ryurik says slowly. Anyone else is optional. His eyes drift, as if by accident, toward the glass doors where the staff move back and forth like a shadow show. For a split second, his gaze snags on me. He doesn't linger. He doesn't have to. Later, when the drinks are poured and the talk grows louder again, Ivana steps out onto the balcony to take a call. I follow with a tray of fresh glasses, the door sliding shut behind me. The night air is cool, the city spread out like a circuit board below. She holds the phone to her ear, speaking in low, rapid Russian I'm not supposed to understand. There is someone in the house, she says. Either his son is finally growing a spine and talking to Americans, or the staff aren't as deaf as they look. My heart slams against my ribs. No, I don't know which yet, she continues. But I will find out. If there's a problem, we remove it. Quietly. Before his father panics, she ends the call and turns. Her eyes land on me. How long have you been out here? She asks. Just came to refresh the drinks, I say evenly. She looks past me, through the glass, at Corbin, then back. The wind tugs at a strand of her hair. She smooths it down with an elegant, irritated gesture. You know, she says, stepping closer, this house has more eyes than doors. It would be unfortunate for someone to be looking in the wrong direction when something falls. I just clean, I say. I don't look. She smiles, all teeth. Everyone looks, she says. The smart ones just pretend they don't. She glides past me, back inside, heels clicking on the frame. I stand there, gripping the tray until my fingers ache. Later that night, after the last glass is washed and the last guest has left, I pass the open door of Ryurik's study and hear him speaking to one of his oldest lieutenants. We have a leak, he says, in Russian. No games now. Money does not freeze itself. Conversations do not repeat themselves in courtrooms by coincidence. From where? The lieutenant asks. The docks, the banks, the judges. Maybe all three, Ryurik says. Maybe here. I can't see his face from the hallway, but I can hear the way the word here lands. Heavy, suspicious. The staff? The lieutenant asks. They are paid to be invisible, Ryurik replies. But invisible things have eyes. We forget that. Paper rustles. "Make a list," he says. "Everyone who has been in this house longer than 6 months. Staff, guards, drivers. I want names, histories, weaknesses." "And the boy?" the lieutenant asks. He has been restless. He questions too much. Silence stretches. "He is my son," Reurik says finally. "If he is the leak, we handle it differently." Differently. I don't want to know what that means. I move before they can catch my shadow on the floor, sliding down the hallway, my heart beating so hard I feel it in my teeth. In my tiny room later, I sit on the edge of the narrow bed, hands shaking, breathing shallow. They are making lists, checking histories, looking for weaknesses, and my file, if anyone pulled it, would read like a neon sign. Speaks Russian, grew, up poor, co-signed wrong loan, has everything to gain and everything to lose. Invisible people see everything. Now the people I'd hoped would never really see me are turning their heads. And somewhere in another part of the house, a father is looking at 2 lists in his mind, his son, his staff, and wondering which one is the crack in his empire. 2 days after I heard Reurik say the word leak, I woke up with my heart already racing. My alarm hadn't even gone off yet. The house was quiet in that way big houses get right before dawn. Air humming. Pipes groaning. The city outside still deciding if it wanted to wake up. I lay there staring at the ceiling, knowing what I had to do and hating every step of it. They were making lists. I needed to get ahead of one. By 7 a.m., I was sitting in the same grey interview room downtown, hands wrapped around a paper cup of terrible coffee, staring at the scuffed table. Araline walked in carrying a file that looked thicker than last time. "You're early," she said. "Couldn't sleep," I answered. She sat, slid the file down like it was a game piece. "You were right," she said. "They're spooked. Our monitoring picked up shifts in their accounts. They're probing for holes. That makes your job harder and our window smaller." My stomach knotted. "They're checking staff histories." "We figured they would," she said. "We've been doing the same to them. That's how this works. They stare into our house, we stare into theirs." I hesitated. "There's something else," I said. "Someone else." Her eyes narrowed. "Go on." "Corbin," I said. "The son. He knows I speak Russian now. He put it together in the pantry. He's been talking to you too, off the record, through some friend. Trying to build his own exit." She didn't flinch. "You're sure it's me and not another office? You drink your coffee black. 2 sugars, I said. He mentioned that about the woman he met. Said she looked like she hadn't slept properly in 5 years and still scared him more than his father. For the first time since I met her, she almost laughed outright. "Sounds like me," she admitted. "So," I said, "are we on the same side? Or are you collecting us like trading cards?" Her face went serious again. "Corbin came to us months ago," she said. "He dipped a toe in, then panicked and pulled it back. Sons in his position do that all the time. They want out until they remember what out costs. We didn't have enough leverage to keep him in the room. And now I have you," she said simply. "You've given us specifics, names, dates, patterns. He gave us vibes and guilt. Useful, but not enough." "He says he wants out," I said. "He says he doesn't want to live under his father's thumb. He also agreed to marry a woman who treats him like a business plan." "I don't know which part of him you think you're working with." "The selfish part," she said. "That's usually the one we can bargain with. The conscience is a bonus." I shifted in my chair. "He's not a monster," I said quietly. "Not like his father. But he's not clean either." "Almost nobody in that house is clean," she replied. "Including you, if we're being clinical. You carried plates and smiled while they made deals over bodies." The truth landed, sharp and ugly. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm here." She nodded once. "What exactly did he say in the pantry?" she asked. "And don't romanticize it." "I know you, Valora. You've got a poet brain. I need facts." "He figured out I was talking to someone," I said. "Not who. Just that it wasn't a rival family. I told him I'm not working for his father. I admitted I'd met you. I didn't tell him about the wire or the papers. Did you tell him you signed as an informant? She pressed. No, I said, but he's not stupid. He knows I'm deeper in than just gossip. She tapped her pen against the folder, thinking. Do you trust him? She asked. I stared at the table. I want to, I said. That's different. We're past wanting, she said. We're at math. He is either a liability who might accidentally hand you to his father to save himself, or he's another crack in the wall we can use. I need to know which before we move to the next phase. What's the next phase? I asked, dread creeping in. She slid a sheet of paper toward me. It was blank except for a single sentence written in her neat handwriting, in Russian. K tomu vremeni, kak podadut desert, vashi sheta na Kipre uze budut zamorozheny. By the time dessert is served, your accounts in Cyprus will already be frozen. My throat went dry. You want me to say this out loud? I said slowly. In that house? Yes, she said. At a specific dinner, at a specific time, in front of specific people. Right after our people pushed the final button on the freeze orders. I pictured it. Crystal glasses, white linen, those men laughing. Me standing there in a black uniform with a tray and a death wish. Why? I asked, even though I already knew. Because we don't just need to stop their money, she said. We need them caught reacting. We need them on record, in front of witnesses, realizing what just happened. It makes the case sharper, harder to wiggle out of. The optics matter. You want drama, I said. I want justice, she replied. Sometimes they look the same on camera. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She looked at me steadily. If I say that, I said, I'm not invisible anymore. I'm not staff. I'm the fuse. Yes, she said, but we will be at your door before the flame hits the dynamite. Can you promise that? I asked. She held my gaze. No, she said. I can promise we will try like hell. I can promise we'll coordinate timing so we're already moving when you speak. But you know how this works, Valora. There are always variables. My chest felt tight. Why Cyprus? I asked. Why that line? Because that's where they think they're safest, she said. Hit them in their comfort zone. Make the first crack happen where they're most smug. The rest will follow. It sounds like a movie, I muttered. It's not, she said. You don't get stunt doubles. We sat in silence for a moment. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a younger version of me whispered, you wanted a different kind of life. Something soft, something simple. That ship sailed when I signed the NDA, then sank when I signed hers. If we do this, I said, Corbin will be at that table. Probably, she agreed. Which is why we need to decide now, is he part of the plan or collateral to it? The word collateral made my skin crawl. You tell me, I said. You've met him. He's useful, she said. He hates pieces of his life, loves other pieces too much, and is scared of all of it. Classic air caught between loyalty and self-preservation. If he knew we were coming, he might tip us off to his father's last-minute tricks. He might also warn his father in a panic. That's the risk. What if, I said slowly, I don't tell him it's the feds? She considered. Go on. I tell him something's coming, I said. That his accounts aren't as safe as he thinks. That the walls are closing in. I don't give him times or names. Just enough to push him off the fence. If he decides to cooperate fully, you get his side. If he runs to Daddy, I swallowed. We'll know who he chose. You're proposing a loyalty test, she said. I'm proposing we stop pretending we have time to ease him into anything, I replied. He's already hearing footsteps. Ivana is sniffing around. His father is making lists. If we don't force his hand, they will... She studied me like she was weighing something fragile in her mind. You're getting cold, she said quietly. Sharper. Is that a problem? It's necessary, she said. Doesn't mean I have to like watching it happen. She sighed. Fine, she said. Talk to him, carefully. Make no promises. Give no specific dates. Just nudge his conscience. See which way he leans. And Valora, yeah? Don't fall on a sword for him, she said. He was born into this. You were dragged in. I know your heart. It likes to confuse pity with responsibility. Don't. Her words stung because they were true. Back at the mansion, the air felt thicker. They'd stepped up security, new guards, more cameras that weren't there a week before. The house manager was snappier, her eyes darting around like she expected someone to jump out of the curtains. I found Corbin in the library that evening. He was alone for once. No Ivana, no father, no lieutenants pretending to be uncles. Just him and a stack of papers that looked like they weighed 50 pounds each. "You're not supposed to be in here," he said without looking up, sensing me before he saw me. I stepped inside anyway. "Your father told them to make lists," I said, "of everyone who's been here longer than 6 months. Did you know?" He looked up then, eyes narrowing. "Where did you hear that?" "Hallway," I said. Door cracked. Like always, he exhaled through his nose. "Of course." He put the papers down, motioned me closer with a tilt of his head. I came in, shutting the door behind me. "Guess who's on that list?" I said. "You," he said. "The guards, the drivers, me." "Exactly." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "They're scared," he said. "They should be. I've been moving pieces." "So have they," I said. "And those pieces look like people. They're asking questions, checking backgrounds, waiting for something to smell off." He studied me. "And you're here because," he prompted. "Because we're out of time to pretend we're not in this together," I said. For a heartbeat, the room went very still. "You're admitting it," he said, "that you're working with them." "I'm admitting I'm not working for your father," I said, "and that the people I am talking to are closer than they've ever been." His throat bobbed. "How close?" he asked. "I can't tell you that," I answered. "For your safety and mine. Don't hit me with the 'it's for your own good' speech," he said, annoyance flickering. "My whole life has been that speech with a gun behind it." "This is different," I said. "I'm not holding a gun, just information. That can kill just as fast in this world," he muttered. He stood, came around the desk, leaned against it in front of me. Close. His hands found the edge of the wood, knuckles pale. His knee brushed mine. It wasn't an accident. That small, casual contact grounded both of us. "Are they coming?" he asked quietly. "The feds, the agents, whatever you want to call them. Are they really going to try to take him down, or are you just another file in a cabinet somewhere?" "They're coming," I said. "Soon. I don't know the exact day, but soon. They're not playing anymore." He looked past me at the floor-to-ceiling shelves, like he could see through the wood to all the secrets crammed behind it. "If they come," he said, "I want to be on the right side when it happens." "Define right side," I said. "The one not holding a gun on a maid wired to the government," he said. "The one not defending a man who would sell me to save his own skin." "For a long time, you were fine benefiting from his decisions," I said, not letting him off. "Now that the floor's getting hot, you want to step on a different rug. That's convenient." He flinched, but didn't argue. "You're not wrong," he admitted. "I have blood on my clothes, even if I've never squeezed a trigger. I know that. I'm trying to change it before it hardens into who I am." His voice cracked just a little at the end. He stepped closer again, his hand brushing my arm. "Let me help you," he said. "You're not the only one who hears things in this house. I know accounts he doesn't think I know about. Safe houses, names of judges on his holiday list. I can give you things from the inside that you can't get carrying plates." The offer hung there, heavy and bright. "You'd be incriminating yourself," I said. "Cooperating means admitting you cooperated before." "Then I admit it," he said. "I'd rather sign my own confession than let him write the story alone." I searched his face. Fear lived there. So did something like resolve. Another person might have melted right there. Let the intimacy of that moment sweep them into trust. I'd been burned too many times for that. "If I bring your name to them," I said slowly, "there's no going back. They'll want more than, 'my dad is bad.' They'll want documents, specifics. You'd be testifying, maybe in open court, maybe under protection. You'd be a traitor to this family forever. Good, he said. His answer was so immediate it startled me. I'm already a traitor in their minds, he said. Because I question, because I flinch, because I don't enjoy the parts I'm supposed to enjoy. If I'm going to wear that title, I'd rather earn it. He reached up and tucked a loose piece of my hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered at the curve of my neck, warm against my skin. I shivered. You don't have to trust me completely, he said softly. Just enough to tell them I'm willing to talk. His thumb traced a slow, reassuring circle at the base of my skull. It was such a small touch, but my whole body leaned into it before I could stop myself. And when I kissed him, it was a feeling so euphoric I could have gotten lost in it forever, but soon it was over, too soon. If you're lying, I said, voice barely above a whisper, if this is some long game for your father. It's not, he said. He doesn't know I'm even considering this. He still thinks fear is enough to keep me on a leash. Is it? I asked. Yes, he said. Every second of every day. I'm terrified. But I'm more scared of waking up at 50 and realizing I spent my whole life holding the wrong line. Something in me cracked. Okay, I said quietly. I'll tell her. Relief rushed across his face so quickly it almost broke me. Thank you, he breathed. Don't thank me yet, I said. Thank me when you're not standing under his roof anymore. His hand slid from my neck to my shoulder, down my arm. He caught my hand, laced our fingers together, squeezed. You know, if we make it out of this, he said. If we're not dead or on opposite coasts under new names, I'm going to ask you that question again. What question? I asked. If I were just some guy in the city, he said, echoing his words from the kitchen, would you have coffee with me? Emotion punched through my chest. We'll see, I said. Survive first, flirt later. He laughed, the sound rough and real, then sobered. There was a knock on the library door. We sprang apart. The house manager poked her head in. Mr. Corbin, your father wants you in the study, she said. Her eyes flicked to me, suspicious. Valora, you're needed in the dining room. Guests tonight. Guests. Dinner. My stomach dropped. Cyprus, I thought. Dessert. It's happening. Be right there, Corbin said. When she left, he looked at me, reading my face. Is this it? He whispered. I don't know. I lied. But I did. Not the exact minute, not the exact second. But I knew the air when a storm was close. You look like you're about to jump off a building, he said. I might be, I replied. I turned to go. He caught my wrist one last time, pulled me back just enough to press a quick, fierce kiss to my forehead. It was so intimate, so ominous, and in that moment, with all the uncertainty surrounding us, I wished I'd taken every opportunity in those dark hallways. Don't die, he said. Don't make me regret this, I said back. His hand slipped from mine. I walked out of the library and down the hall toward the dining room, every step echoing like a countdown. In my head, I repeated the Russian sentence Araline had written out. By the time dessert is served, your accounts in Cyprus will already be frozen. When I stepped into the dining room, the table was already set. White linen, polished silver, crystal glasses waiting. The same men, the same laughter, the same language they thought would save them. The only thing different was me, and the quiet promise I was carrying in my mouth like a live grenade. The night they picked for the dinner didn't look different from any other rich man's night. That was the scariest part. Same white tablecloth, same candles melting slow, same crystal catching the light, same men in dark suits, laughing like there weren't human beings under their boots. The only things that had changed were inside me. A sentence burned behind my teeth in Russian, and somewhere downtown, a team of people I'd only ever seen in bad fluorescent lighting were watching clocks, waiting for the moment I opened my mouth and lit a match. Valora, the house manager hissed, snapping me back. Bread on the left, wine on the right. Don't drift. I'm fine, I said. You look like you're about to faint, she muttered. If you're sick, I'm not sick, I cut in. I'm working. She scanned my face, then shrugged. Your problem, Guests filed in, all cologne and arrogance, and watches that cost more than the rent on my whole building. Ryurik took his place at the head of the table, expression carved out of stone. Corbin slid into the seat to his right, jaw tight, tie perfect. Ivana took the chair beside him, laying her hand on his arm like she was claiming property. I moved around the table with the tray, placing wine, pouring water, breathing slow. Invisible people see everything. Tonight, invisible people were about to make sure everybody else saw too. I caught Corbin's eye once as I leaned in to pour his drink. He looked at me like he could hear the ticking in my head. His lips barely moved. "You sure?" He breathed. "Yes," I said, just as quietly. Ivana's eyes flicked between us, a flash of suspicion. I stepped away before her mind could grab onto it. Dinner started. They talked about politics at first, sports, some art dealer in Manhattan who got raided. Everyone pretended not to notice the extra security by the doors, the way one of the guards' hands never strayed far from his jacket. Then, like always, the language shifted. English dissolved. Russian slid in. "Cyprus is still our safest bed," one man said. They froze a few accounts. We opened 3 more. Laughter. "Americans love their little sanctions," another replied. "Look at them, swatting at flies while we move the hive. Even if they wake up," a third chimed in, "we'll be gone before they finish filing their forms." My palms were damp on the tray handle. I moved. I poured. I smiled with my teeth shut. Each word they spoke in Russian fed the coil of tension in my spine. Cycles of greed, cycles of contempt. My fingers brushed the collar of my uniform once. Habit from the nights I wore the mic. No wire tonight. Too risky. This was about what they'd say after my line, not before. Dessert plates went down. Small white circles. Gold forks. Tiny, fragile symbols of the moment I'd been walking toward for weeks. "Girl," one of the men said in English, snapping his fingers. "Coffee and smile. This is a celebration." I set the tray down. For 1 second, I saw every version of my life layered on top of each other. The girl in the laundromat apartment, drowning in overdue bills. The maid in the fancy house, collecting insults like tips. The informant in the grey room, signing her name on a line she couldn't erase. I heard my grandmother's laugh in my head, tired and proud. Invisible people see everything. I straightened my back, lifted my eyes, put both hands on the tray, not because I needed the balance, but because I wanted them to see that they didn't shake. And in clear, unbroken Russian I said, "K tomu vremeni, kak podadut desert, vashi sheta na Kipre uze budut zamorozheni." By the time dessert is served, your accounts in Cyprus will already be frozen. Silence did not fall. It crashed. Forks froze in mid-air. A glass paused halfway to a mouth. Eyes turned toward me disbelieving. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then every phone on that table buzzed at once. It sounded like a swarm of angry bees. One man grabbed his phone, thumb flying. His face drained of color. Net, ito nevozmochno. No, no, impossible. Another cursed, sweat popping on his forehead as he stared at notifications piling across his screen. The transfers. They're blocked. Every account. "Check Dubai," someone barked. "Check Panama." More swiping. More panic. "They're all flagged," a guest choked out. "All of them." "How?" Slowly, very slowly, Ryurik rose to his feet. He didn't look at the men first. He looked at me. "How?" he said softly, in English. "Do you know those words?" The room felt too small. I could hear my own heart trying to punch out of my ribs. I could feel Corbin's eyes on me like a hand pressed to my back. Terrified, furious. Something else tangled in there too. I could have lied. I could have said I heard it on TV, that I was practicing a phrase from some movie. But I was so past lying to these men. Still in Russian, I said, «Может быть, в следующий раз вы подумаете, прежде чем обсуждать своих слуг как животных. Maybe next time you'll think before you talk about your servants like animals. The insult landed harder than the line about their accounts. A muscle ticked in Ryurik's jaw. Around the table, men were half standing now, phones in one hand, napkins falling to the floor. The guards at the doors shifted, reaching for what they kept hidden in their jackets. Phones on the table, Ryurik said quietly. Now, no one hesitated. Fear, it turns out, is excellent at cutting through bravado. Black screens hit white linen. Slabs of plastic and glass lined up like offerings. Ryurik stepped around his chair, never taking his eyes off me. In my house, he said, switching back to Russian, I decide who understands what. His steps were unhurried, controlled. The slower he moved, the more my skin crawled. You cleaned my floors, he said. You poured my drinks. You smiled when you were told. And all this time, you carried my language in your pocket like a knife. He stopped an arm's length away. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to back up. I didn't. You've been talking to someone, he said. You think the timing of those freezes is a coincidence? You think they hit Cyprus now, just to make a point to me? He tilted his head. Who owns you? He asked. I opened my mouth. There was a sound from the front of the mansion. Not a knock. A boom. 1, 2, 3. Then a voice thundered down the corridor, filling the house. Federal agents, nobody move. Everything shattered at once. Chairs scraped back. Someone cursed. A glass hit the floor and exploded in shards. The guards by the doors reached for their guns fully now. For a second, we were all pinned in that moment. The men with money, the son, the maid. The father. All of us listening to the heavy pounding of feet down the hallway. Then the dining room doors burst open. Agents flooded in, weapons drawn, vests marked with letters I'd learned to respect, FBI, ATF even. A few with police in big white print. Hands where we can see them. A woman shouted. Chaos. Some men obeyed immediately, hands shooting into the air. Others went for guns and froze when red dots landed on their chests. One idiot actually tried to stand and charge. 3 agents took him down before he made it 2 steps. Everybody down. Another agent barked. On your knees, hands on your head. I stood frozen, tray still in my hands. Valora, someone yelled. I didn't realize it was Corbin until he grabbed me, dragging me behind. Him, putting his body between me and the nearest guard with a weapon. Don't shoot her, he shouted. She's staff. The guard closest to us swung his gun our direction anyway, adrenaline overriding common sense. Step away from her, he yelled. On the ground, both of you. Corbin didn't move. He stayed in front of me, arms slightly spread, making himself bigger, a human shield in an expensive suit. You can say a lot about a man. You can argue about his choices and his timing and his guilt, but in that moment, when there were guns in the room and fear everywhere, he tried to put his body between mine and the bullets. Romance isn't always kisses and moonlights. Sometimes it's this. On your knees, sir, another agent snapped, flanking the first. Now, slowly, eyes flicking between them, Corbin lowered himself to the floor, hands laced behind his head. He didn't look back at me, but I could feel his message. Don't move. Hands up, miss, the agent said to me. Step very slowly away from him. I put the tray down, lifted my hands, moved to the side. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw men I'd served coffee to for months being cuffed, shoved against walls, read rights. One screamed about lawyers, another about diplomatic immunity. The agents listened about as much as life had been listening to me before this. Then, over the mess, a familiar voice cut through. Valora Reed, it called. Don't let anybody move her. I turned. Araline stepped into the dining room wearing a vest and a grim expression, hair pulled back tighter than I'd ever seen it. She scanned the room, eyes sharp, taking in guards, guns, me. Miss Reed is coming with us, she said, flashing her badge at the nearest agent. Nobody touches her without my say-so. It hit me then, really hit, that this wasn't another planning session. This was the moment everything we'd talked about crashed into their lives and mine at the same time. "This is entrapment," one of the men shouted. "You have no right." "Sit down," Arlene said without looking at him. He sat. Her eyes found mine. For a flicker of a second, something softened there. Pride, worry. Then it was gone. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "No," I said. "Shaken?" "Good," she said. "Stay that way. It means you understand what's happening." Behind her, Ryurik was still standing. He hadn't dropped to his knees like the others. He watched everything with a predator's stillness, hands loose at his sides. 2 agents had guns trained on him. One was mid-sentence, reading him his rights. "You have the right to remain." "You think this changes anything?" Ryurik interrupted. "Calm. You freeze a few accounts, parade a few men on the news, and you think the world tilts. It tilts for the people you hurt," Arlene said. "And that's enough for me." He finally turned his eyes fully on me. "Congratulations," he said in English. "You've traded one master for another." My throat tightened. "I traded silence for a chance," I said. "That's more than you ever offered anybody." His lips curled. "We'll see," he said. An agent stepped in, tugging his arms behind his back, snapping cuffs on his wrists. Watching that, watching a man who'd made people disappear get his own hands finally restrained, hit something deep inside me. Relief, terror, sad satisfaction. But there wasn't time to feel any of it properly. "Move," someone barked behind me. "We need to get priority witnesses out before his people regroup." 2 agents flanked me. One reached for my arm. I jerked back on instinct. "I'm not." "You are," Arlene said firmly. "You're done here. We have to go now." "What about my mother?" I asked, panic punching through my chest. "She's at home." "She's already in motion," Arlene said. "We picked her up after you called in this morning. She's safe. We'll take you to her." "What about—" I glanced at Corbin. He was still on his knees, hands locked behind his head, an agent standing over him. His eyes met mine. The room, the noise, the chaos, all of it blurred around that look. "He needs to come too," I said. "He talked to you. He has information. If you leave him here, his father's people—" "We know who he is," Arlene said. "He'll have choices, cooperation, deals. But he's not your problem right now." Her words hit like a slap. "He's a witness," I insisted. "He's been trying to get out, even if he's slow about it. If you leave him here, they won't—" "Valora," she snapped, "you are not here to negotiate anyone else's survival. You did your part. Let us do ours." I hated her for that, and loved her for saying it out loud. Because she was right. I had spent my whole life trying to hold up men who didn't know how to hold themselves. My ex with his loans, my bosses with their secrets, even this one, kneeling on the floor, who'd finally started reaching for the right things. "You're taking her?" Corbin called, his voice rough. "Where?" "Somewhere you can't follow," Arlene said. His eyes flashed. "Let me talk to her," he said, twisting his neck to see me better. 2 minutes. 30 seconds, Arlene replied, and not a word in Russian. She stepped aside just enough that we could see each other clearly. I took a step toward him before the agents at my sides pulled me back. "Stop," one muttered. "We don't have time." "It's fine," Arlene said. "But make it quick." I knelt a little, just enough so we were on eye level. He was still on his knees, wrists cuffed behind his head, hair slightly mussed, shirt rumpled for the first time since I'd met him. He looked human. "Hey," I said, my voice breaking around the word. "Hey," he echoed. For a second, we just stared at each other. "I told you not to die," he said, a sad, crooked half-smile pulling at his mouth. "I didn't," I said. "Not yet." He swallowed. "When they question me," he said quietly, "I'll tell them everything. Not just about him, about the money, the ports, the judges. I'll sign whatever I need to sign. I'll stand in whatever courtroom they throw me in." "Do it for you," I said. "Not for me." "I'm doing it for both," he said. Even if this is the last time I see you." My chest clenched. "Don't say that," I whispered. He leaned forward as far as he could with the cuffs and the guns and the fear. I leaned in too. We didn't have room for a movie kiss. There were too many eyes, too many guns, too much risk. So he pressed his forehead to mine one last time, our breaths mingling, the contact burning itself into my memory like a brand. "If I ever get out of this without a new face and a new name," he murmured, voice shaking, "I'm finding you. Coffee, cheap diner, no bodyguards. You owe me an answer." Tears stung my eyes. "If I ever get to be just some girl again," I said, "I'll give you one." The agent to my right cleared his throat. "Time's up." Corbin pulled back, eyes bright, throat working. "Go," he said, "before they change their minds." "I'll tell her you're willing," I said to Araline without looking away from him. "Don't bury him if he chooses right." "No promises," she said. "But I listen." "That's more than your boss ever did." The agents moved. They pulled me up, guided me toward the door. The room blurred, men being dragged out, phones bagged, papers scooped into evidence files. As I crossed the threshold, I looked back one last time. Corbin was still on his knees, shoulders squared, head high. His father, hands cuffed, was staring at him like he'd personally rearranged the universe. And I walked away from both of them, heart pounding, stepping into a new life that felt like walking off a cliff. The last thing I heard as the hallway swallowed me was Ryurik's voice, cold and distant. Of all the betrayals I expected, I didn't think it would be from my own table and my own blood. The door swung shut. Sirens wailed faint outside. Agents hustled me down the corridor, through the foyer, into the night. I climbed into the back of an unmarked car, hands shaking, breath shallow. As the mansion shrank in the rear window, its windows flashing with blue and red and chaos, one thought anchored itself in my chest. I had silenced a table full of Mafia men with one sentence in Russian. Now I had to live long enough to figure out who I was when I wasn't being their maid, their leak, or their lesson. And whether there was any version of this story where a girl like me still got to have a happy ending. They say when a house falls, the dust gets everywhere. It's been 18 months, and I still find pieces of that mansion in my dreams. Not the marble or the chandelier, the sounds, boots on polished floors, a man shouting about accounts in Cyprus, an assistant US attorney saying, "You did your part. Let us do ours." If you're still with me right now, let me ask you straight. What would you have done? After that night, run as far as you could, or stay and face the fire you helped light? Hold that answer in your mind. I'm curious which version of you survives. My name is still Valora, but everything else is different. I live in a little walk-up in Queens now. The kind where you can hear your neighbor's TV through the wall and the upstairs kid practices trumpet every Sunday like it's a public service. The paint peels in the hallway. The stairwell smells like fried food and somebody's incense. I like it. It's honest. Mama has her own room. Her meds are in a neat plastic box, labeled and filled on time. The government paid off her hospital debt using seized assets. Translation: part of the money they took from men who joked about poor people now keeps my mother breathing. Quiet justice looks like a pharmacy receipt with $0 at the bottom. I work at a legal aid office now, not as a lawyer, not yet. As an interpreter, Russian, Spanish sometimes. Whatever language walks in the door wearing fear and cheap shoes. I sit in small rooms with people who are where I was, stuck between powerful men and paperwork, and I make sure nothing gets lost between their mouths and the record. Some days it feels like penance. Most days it feels like purpose. The first time I saw Ryurik on TV in handcuffs, it didn't feel real. They showed clips from the trial, grey suit, thinner hair, fake calm. His lawyers talked about overreach and misunderstanding and complexity. The prosecutors talked about bodies, bank accounts, and bribes. I watched from my couch with Mama's hand in mine. When they read out the guilty verdicts on the RICO charges, my chest hurt so bad I thought something was wrong. It took me a minute to realize it was just my lungs figuring out what relief felt like. He's in a federal prison now. No marble, no chandeliers, no maids to pretend they don't understand his words. Ivana didn't escape either. Turns out when you brag on recorded calls about never loving your husband and always loving his accounts, juries don't find you charming. Money is loud on paper. Blood is loud in testimony. Men like them never thought either would turn on them. The day I testified, my legs shook so hard under the table I thought I'd fall. They kept my name sealed, used screens, controlled what the public saw. But he saw me. He knew. Our eyes met once, across that sterile room. I didn't flinch. Invisible people see everything. Sometimes they speak. He looked away first. After me, there was another witness. Corbin. He took the stand in a plain suit, no fancy watch, no arrogant tilt to his chin. He talked about accounts, judges, ports, deals. He signed papers that cut his sentence way down in exchange for cooperation. He didn't look at his father once while he was up there. When it was over, when the judge set a date for sentencing and the lawyers started pulling off their wigs of professionalism, I walked out into the hallway on unsteady legs. He was there, leaning against the wall, cuffs on his wrists, an officer a few feet away. We hadn't spoken in months. I almost walked past. Almost. "Hey," he said. My feet stopped like someone pulled a string. I turned. He looked older. Not in his face exactly. In his eyes. Like someone had turned on a new light and he hadn't quite adjusted. "Hey," I answered. For a second, neither of us knew what to do with our hands or our words. "I meant what I said," he told me. "On the stand. About him. About the money. About all of it." "I know," I said. "Doesn't fix what I let happen," he said. "But it's something. It's a lot," I corrected. "You stepped on your own family name in public. That's not nothing." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You always did have a talent for understatements." His guard cleared his throat. "Wrap it up." "Where do you go after this?" I asked. He shrugged a shoulder. "Probation, monitoring, some kind of halfway house program for people who helped tear down what they used to profit from. They took almost everything. The accounts, the properties. I've got whatever they let me earn from now on. That's it." "Seems fair," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah, it does." He looked at me, really looked. "You look different," he said. "Lighter, stronger." "I work on the right side of tables now," I said. "That helps." His eyes softened. "Good," he said. "You deserve that." There was a pause. We both felt it, the conversation we weren't having. "We're getting moved," the guard said. "Right," Corbin muttered, pushing off the wall. He took 2 steps, then stopped and looked back at me. "If I ever see you again," he said quietly, "and I'm not wearing these." He lifted his cuffed hands a little. "I'm still buying that coffee." "Get there first," I replied. "Then we'll talk." The guard tugged his arm. He walked away. I went home to my mother, my little apartment, my new job. Life shrank and widened at the same time. Months passed. I learned bus routes. I bought second-hand furniture. I helped clients who reminded me of myself sit a little straighter in government offices. Sometimes I wondered about him. Not in the old way, where my stomach twisted and my skin hummed just because he walked into a room. In a quieter way. Did he show up to his check-ins on time? Did he learn how to live in a place where nobody bowed when he entered? Did he miss anything about the old life besides me? If you've ever loved someone who had to grow up in front of you, you know this part. The waiting without waiting. Tell me in the comments when we finish. Have you ever had to let someone grow on their own, even while a piece of you still checked the door? One Thursday night, about a year after the sentencing, I stayed late at the office. Interpreters' schedules get messy. A family had come in last minute, scared and desperate. We worked their case till the overhead lights buzzed louder than usual. By the time I left, the sky was in that blue-grey stage before true dark. I was too tired to cook. So I went to the corner diner. Not because the food was amazing, because the coffee was cheap and nobody bothered you if you stared out the window too long. The bell above the door jingled when I walked in. "Hey, Vel," the waitress called. "The usual?" "Yeah," I said. And a slice of that pie that looks like it regrets existing." She laughed, scribbled, walked away. I slid into a booth, dropped my bag beside me, and let my shoulders fall for the first time all day. The diner TV was playing the news on low volume. Something about another politician falling from grace. I didn't look too closely. People came and went. A kid in a hoodie, a nurse in scrubs, a couple arguing quietly in a corner booth. Then the bell over the door jingled again. I don't know what made me look up. Habit, maybe. The man who walked in wasn't in a suit. He wore a plain dark jacket, jeans, and, God help me, a pair of beat-up sneakers that squeaked on the tile. His hair was a little longer. His jaw had more scruff. There was a faint scar along his cheekbone I didn't remember. But his eyes were the same. Corbin. For a second, everything inside me shut down, then started up again twice as loud. He scanned the room, nervous, like he wasn't sure he should stay. Then he saw me. Time did that stupid movie thing where it stretched. He walked toward my booth like he was approaching a wild animal. "Is this seat taken?" he asked. I snorted. "Because what else do you do when your ex-Mafia heir walks into your cheap diner at 9:30 on a Thursday?" "It is now," I said. He slid into the booth across from me. Up close, the changes were clearer. Lines at the corners of his eyes. A tan that didn't look like it came from yacht decks anymore. A watch so normal, it almost looked wrong on his wrist. "How did you find me?" I asked. He winced. "Not in a creepy way," he said. "I promise. I asked my probation officer if I was allowed to try to find a former witness after the case closed. She said as long as it's mutual and nobody's under protection, it's technically allowed." "You tracked me through paperwork?" I asked. He smiled, small and a little shy. "I got a legit job after they let me out," he said. "I do logistics consulting now, legal, borderline boring. I looked up the contracts for the legal aid office that handled your testimony paperwork, saw your name on some interpreter forms, took a chance on the closest diner open late, near your shift ending." "You stalked me with spreadsheets," I said. "Yeah," he admitted. "Kinda." I tried to keep my face stern. I failed. I laughed, hand over my mouth. "You're ridiculous," I said. "Consistently," he agreed. The waitress came, dropped off my coffee and pie, eyed him. "You want anything?" she asked. He glanced at me, then at her. "Coffee," he said. "Black." She nodded, walked away. For a moment, we just sat there, the hum of the diner around us like white noise. "How are you?" I asked. "On a scale of federal prison to my father's dinner table," he said. "Pretty good. Seriously." He took a breath. "I go to therapy twice a week," he said. "I see my probation officer once a month. I pay rent on a crappy apartment with my own paycheck. I ride the subway like everybody else. When I wake up in the middle of the night, it's not because of gunshots or screaming. It's mostly because my upstairs neighbor watches action movies too loud." "That sounds nice," I said. "It is," he replied. "It's small. It's mine." He studied me. "What about you?" he asked. "I translate for people who don't want to get eaten by systems they don't understand," I said. "I pay rent on a crappy apartment with my own paycheck. My neighbor's kid plays trumpet." He smiled. "Sounds like we switched empires," he said. "Traded one kind of power for another." "I'll take this one," I said. "Every time." He nodded. There was a pause. He looked down at his hands, then back up at me. "So," he said, voice softer, "about that coffee I promised." "You're already drinking it," I pointed out. This is warm brown water," he said. "I meant the question." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, attention so focused it made my skin buzz. "If I were just some guy in the city," he said, "no mansion, no last name. That scares people, no offshore anything. Would you have coffee with me?" He'd asked me that in a kitchen once, when the house still owned both of us. It felt different here, less like a dangerous fantasy, more like a real choice. The most intimate thing about that moment wasn't the way his eyes held mine. It was that for the first time since I met him, I could say yes or no without wondering if someone would die because of it. Intimacy doesn't always happen in bedrooms. Sometimes it happens in cheap vinyl booths under flickering fluorescent lights. Yes, I said. His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding his breath for a year. Yeah? He asked, disbelieving. Yeah, I said. But we're already here, so you're kind of stuck with me. The waitress dropped his coffee. He wrapped his hands around the mug, like it was an anchor. I'm not rich anymore, he blurted, like it might change my answer. I mean, I'm not broke, but whatever I build now, I build slow. No shortcuts, no blood money. Good, I said. He blinked. Good? I don't need yachts, I said. I need someone whose conscience doesn't disappear when the bill comes. He swallowed. I can't erase what my last name did, he said quietly. I can't change where I came from. I can only choose what I bring into the room now. Then bring that, I said. And maybe some dessert next time. That pie is suspicious. He laughed, the sound softer and freer than I'd ever heard it in that mansion. You're still you, he said. Did you expect me to turn into a different person? I was afraid everything I dragged you through would harden you, he admitted. Make you shut everyone out. Trust me, I said. I still shut most people out. And me. I made you stand in the lobby of my life on purpose, I said. I wanted to see if you'd wait. How'd I do? You're here, aren't you? I said. We talked till the diner closed. About nothing and everything. About his first day of legal work. How weird it felt to put his name on something that didn't involve shell companies. About my first time translating for a woman whose landlord tried to cheat her. About Mama's jokes. About his mother, who's alive but not free, trapped in a different kind of prison. Her own choices. We didn't fix it all. We didn't try. When we stepped out into the cool night air, he walked me to the subway like we were. Two normal people who'd met at work instead of under a chandelier filled with secrets. At the top of the station steps, we stopped. The streetlight painted a soft circle around us. Can I ask you one more thing? He said. You're on a roll, I replied. Go ahead. He took a breath. Do you hate me? He asked. I thought about the kitchen, the hallways, the way he'd called me a distraction, the way he'd stepped in front of guns, the way he'd chosen the stand over silence. I don't, I said. Sometimes I hate what you were, but I don't hate who you're trying to be. His eyes shone wet for a second before he blinked it away. Can the first... He hesitated. If you don't want, use your words, I said gently. He huffed out a laugh. Can I hold your hand? He asked. Just that. For now, it was such a stupidly simple request that my heart twisted. Yes, I said. He reached out. Our fingers laced together. Warm, solid, human. We stood there, hands joined, city moving around us like we were in a snow globe. The rest of the world just noise. Then, slowly, he stepped closer. Still PG-13, he murmured, half joking, half not. I remember the rules. You're the only Mafia heir I know who worries about content ratings, I said. He smiled, his free hand lifted, hovering near my face. Tell me to stop, he said. I didn't. He brushed his knuckles along my jaw, traced the line to my chin, tilted my face up. This wasn't a stolen, almost kiss in a dark pantry. This wasn't a desperate touch in a hallway. This was a question. A full, clear, brave question. I answered it. I closed the tiny space between us and pressed my mouth to his. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't slow motion. It was better. It was steady, warm, gentle. His lips moved against mine like he was memorizing something he never expected to own, a moment where nobody else had a say. His hand slid to the back of my neck, not gripping, just holding, grounding me. I curled my fingers in his jacket, pulling him closer by inches, letting all the almosts and maybes and one days finally exhale. When we parted, our foreheads leaned together, breaths mingling in white clouds. Wow, he said softly. Yeah, I agreed. If this was a movie, he murmured, This is where they'd cut to credits. This isn't a movie, I replied. We still have rent. He laughed. That free sound again. But, I added, if somebody is watching our story right now, this would be a good place for them to do something about it. If you made it all the way here, I said, voice half in my head, half out, you already know what quiet justice looks like. It's not flashy revenge. It's people choosing to stand up in the small ways and the big ones, even when their voice shakes. If you felt anything in this story, anger, hope, relief, don't just let it fade. Hit like so more people see it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell me in the comments, what does justice look like to you in your life right now? Corbin squeezed my hand, unaware of the conversation I was having with a whole invisible room full of listeners. Come over tomorrow, I said. I'll cook. You can do the dishes. We'll argue about whose playlist is worse. That sounds like a date, he said. It is, I replied. No ports, no judges. Just us. Best deal I've ever made, he said. We went down the subway steps together, our fingers still locked, our footprints just 2 sets among thousands. I'd started as an invisible maid in a house built on fear. I ended as a woman who spoke, loved, and chose with her whole chest. In a life that was small, messy, and finally, beautifully, hers. And for the first time, my happy ending didn't look like a mansion. It looked like a cheap diner, a decent man trying his best, a mother who slept without debt, letters on the table, and a story that might make someone out there feel a little less alone. If that's worth anything to you, don't just leave. Tell me where you're watching from, what time it is, and what part of this story stayed with you. Your voice, your reactions, that's how stories like mine keep echoing louder than any Mafia boss ever could.